Good. I drove myself to the hospital. I dislocated my
Just
shoulder.
maybe note
Are
that
you
on that
okay?
paper that
Oh,
everything's
it's-
They
correct.
put it back?
Thank you.
Seconds.
Was it so-
We're recording and we're good to go.
And we're unmuted.
We're unmuted.
I think we're ready when you are.
5:00. Test the microphones. Can folks hear us
Hello?
online?
Yes, we can hear you.
Six. Okay. I hereby call to order the February 6th, 2025 meeting of Frisco Planning Commission. Who's calling roll? Would Kim, please call attendance?
Lessness?
Here.
Kane?
Here.
Forsyth? Here. DeVille?
Here.
Day? Here. Withrow and Conley are absent.
Okay. The previous planning commission meeting minutes have been distributed. If commissioners have any comments or corrections, please voice them now. Being none, we'll take a vote. Is anybody opposed to the approval of the minutes? All in favor?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Okay, now we have the next section of the meeting is for public comments. This is for any comments of anyone in the audience on a subject that is not on the agenda this evening. Citizens making comments should state their name and address for the record, be topic specific, and limit comments to no longer than 3 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to make comments on anything that is not on this evening's agenda? Seeing none, we move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the adoption of the Planning Commission Resolution 25-01.
I'll give you a quick rundown. This is done each year at the first meeting that the planning commission holds. We try to stay in sync with what the town council does. So what this says essentially is that the resolution names the public place for posting notices of the planning commission meetings for the town to be on Frisco Gov. And that is how town council does it and how we started doing it last year. There is a disclaimer in the resolution that if somehow there is a problem with that electronic posting, it will go in town hall as a backup. This, just to make connect the dots a little bit, is actually how your discussion item got added so last minute, because this says within 24 hours, or at least 24 hours, we post on Frisco Gov. Now, just as you know, if it was a public hearing item, it would have to meet the 14 days and other public hearing requirements. So this is just for an agenda, general discussion item type thing. So if you have concerns or questions, let me know, but straightforward. Same as last year, just new number and date
Great, thanks, Katie.
and a
Sounds
motion
Pretty
and
standard.
vote would be great.
Okay. Does anybody on the commission have questions of staff? Any questions? Any discussion? I'm open to a motion.
Is it written somewhere?
I know I'm trying to pull up my,
Move that resolution 2501 is approved.
I move that resolution 2501 is approved.
Thank you.
I'll give a second.
we need a.
Yeah, let's do a call just to be.
Lessness?
Yes.
Kane? Yes. Forsyth? Yes. DeVille?
Yes.
Day?
Yes.
Okay.
Passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is planning file number MAJ-24-0005, CU-24-0001, a sketch plan review of the major site plan application for proposed multifamily residential development consisting of 20 units located at 200 North 7th Avenue, Lot E2, River Pines subdivision. And a conditional use permit application to allow for less than 20% mix of uses in the mixed use zone district. The applicant is Seth
Oh, okay,
Francis,
sure.
representing
Oh.
Blue River Real Estate Fund 4.
Chris is presenting.
Okay, is there a staff report?
Yeah.
Perfect.
There it is.
Okay, so for those that
Yeah.
don't know me, I'm Chris Valdez, Principal Planner for the Town of Frisco. And what we're looking at tonight is a multifamily residential development located at 200 North 7th Avenue. This review is going to focus on a sketch plan, which is an early design phase that allows the Planning Commission to provide feedback before the submission of the final major site plan application. I want everyone to know that there's no vote on the sketch plan during this meeting. Additionally, we will be reviewing a conditional use permit that would allow for 100% residential use in the mixed use zone district. So there could be a vote on the conditional use permit tonight. It's important to mention that this is the third time the Planning Commission has considered this sketch plan. Previous reviews took
This
place
just shows the
November
board.
7th,
It doesn't show
20,
the battlefield so far.
2024 and December 5th, 2024. Therefore, the presentation will be an overview of the changes submitted since those previous reviews. So what we're looking at is going to be a change comparison table, how the definition of bedrooms is looked at, building height, and wetlands. So this is the change from the December 5th, 2024 sketch plan and the February 6th, 2025 sketch plan. The building appears to have 6 separate structures on floors 2 through 4 connected by breezeways. There are 18 market rate units, 13 2-bedroom, 3-bath units, and then 5 3-bedroom, 3-bath units. There now changes, there are going to be 2 deed restricted 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom units, but details on the restrictions have not been specified in the application. The lower level features a below grade parking garage with 47 resident parking spaces, 2 visitor spaces, and 2 ADA spaces. The surface lot outside the building is going to have 4 additional visitor parking spaces. And the bike storage is going to include 8 spaces inside the garage and 10 outside the garage. So with bedrooms, the application is showing offices in each of the units. And staff has determined that the proposed office, where the office is located within these units, qualifies it as a bedroom because of its proximity to the bathroom. We are seeking feedback from the Planning Commission to confirm if they agree with this assessment. The application states that the garage podium was dropped below grade and the finished grade was raised wherever possible. Based on the information in the application, the maximum height of the building is unclear from finished or proposed grades. The maximum height of the building must be shown in the application for the final site plan application when it's submitted. So this is the east elevation. As you can see, they only did the height up to this plywood, top of plywood. And then this is a north elevation where they only did it to the top of plywood here, not to the top of the roof. And then wetlands changed since the last application. There is now disturbance shown within the 25-foot wetland setback. You look at my great drawing here with the blue. That's where it's impacted and the 25-foot wetland setback. If you see, let's see if I can, is my cursor? Yeah, sweet. My cursor's showing up. So this is the 5-foot setback essentially from the 25-foot wetlands. So even they are allowed to go into this right here and right here without a wetland disturbance permit. But they will need to apply for that. So the disturbance is shown within the 25-foot wetland setback. Under the water quality protection of the town code, it states that development and soil disturbance are generally prohibited in or within 25 feet of all water bodies and wetlands. However, development in these areas shall only be permitted in accordance with the standards of section 180-6.7.1. And I can go through that if you want. A wetlands development permit is going to be required before, it's a wetlands development. Wetlands disturbance permit is required before a building permit is submitted. The town engineer actually reviews the permit at an administrative level through the minor site plan process. The application includes a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers stating that they have no objections to the project because wetland areas were not being disturbed. However, the new design will disturb wetlands, necessitating an updated letter from the Army Corps of Engineers when the final site plan application is submitted. And I just wanted to briefly show the two elevations. However, the elevations were not the same, taken from like the same direction for the 3D modeling as they were in the previous application. So this is as close as I could get. So the next 3 slides are just going to be comparisons. This is kind of the roof outline that has changed. I know it's not quite the same thing. And this is a close representation of that side of the building, so. The conditional use permit, we've had some changes since the staff report was submitted. The applicant told us yesterday they would like a vote on the conditional use permit. And the code requires that a conditional use permit and major site plan to run concurrently. The code does not require concurrent decision, but the sketch plan is identified as an informal review as opposed to the final plan. Previously, in previous presentations, the staff has requested that the conditional use permit be decided at the time of the final site plan. And staff believes the conditional use permit should be reviewed with the final site plan. So staff recommendation is that Planning Commission should encourage the applicant to submit the final site plan application as opposed to continually coming back for a sketch plan. And then that the Planning Commission does have the option of approving, denying, or approving with a condition or conditions the conditional use permit tonight. Staff has drafted findings and conditions for discussion if needed.
One thing to add to that is that the planning commission could deny it, approve it with conditions, or approve. If they chose to approve with conditions, it would be based on the plans you have before you today. And so if parking doesn't meet it, or a change occurs to bulk or mass or number of units or height is clarified and has to be modified, that conditional use it would be null and void because the applicant they wouldn't meet the findings anymore because you're making findings based on the site plan before you. So it really, to staff, and we talked to our attorney, we don't recommend that you make a decision on the conditional use. And we have the attorney support that you're not required to until full site plan review.
Okay, I don't understand, I guess. Is the conditional use on the agenda tonight? It
Yes,
is,
but
okay.
We do because we always want you to discuss it, and that's where we've been at with discussing the neighborhood character lately of the building and that criteria. So it's, you can give feedback, but we don't recommend an official vote on it because or else the applicant is pretty much tied into the plans that he has before you tonight, which are informal sketch plans.
Okay, but the code requires them to go together.
Correct.
So how can we approve it if it's not together?
If he wants to make a case that the major site plan and informal sketch counts as a major site plan, but we don't see that on staff and attorney level.
Was it noticed the way a conditional use permit would be noticed on it? It is, okay. Okay, so sorry, I hijacked the questions. Just,
Sorry, and I interrupted.
is that, was that it, Chris? Thank you.
That was it.
Great, thank you. Okay, we move on to commissioner questions of the staff. Jessica, you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. Chris, in the chart that you showed of the bedrooms
Mhm.
and then the office that you showed that would count as a bedroom, was that in the chart?
So the bedrooms that are in the chart right now are just the ones identified as a bedroom. They did not include the offices.
Okay, so if we did include that, how would this chart change? Maybe just take me
So
through
that would be an additional 18 bedrooms.
bedrooms. So right now there's 43 bedrooms.
Right. So add another 18 to that,
And then you need more parking.
and then you would
spaces.
need more parking spaces.
Okay. Got that. Take me back through the wetland setback disturbance, if you will, one more time.
So what we have here is this is the existing wetlands line. They are going to be disturbing the wetlands with this corner of the building, which is unit 201.
So
Just
blue
blue-
is wetlands.
blue
and
is
then
wetlands.
The offset is the setback. Okay.
What's the setback requirement?
Blue is the 25 foot setback.
Facility setback is 25 feet.
Yeah.
Then we historically try to require and encourage the 5-foot noted disturbance because construction vehicles and scaffolding and crews, we don't even think 5 feet is enough, but if you're disturbing and your wall is on that setback line even, not to mention within it, but if it's on the setback line, how are you building up without getting your vehicles? And it counts as disturbance if the vehicles and the staging are in that setback.
So there's 25-foot setback, but there's a 5-foot no disturbance. Something.
That we request and that the applicant showed on here.
Oh, okay.
And so which line? Sorry, I'm not.
So the one highlighted in blue is the actual wetlands, identified wetlands.
Okay.
And
And
then-
then a corner of the building is proposed to be in the actual wetlands.
Two corners of the building are in the wetlands now.
And more than a corner,
Well,
right?
In the
Yeah.
wetlands or in the 25-foot setback?
I'm sorry, in the 25-foot setback. Thank you.
Okay. And then on top of that, so the dashed line offset from here, is that 5 feet?
Yes.
Okay. And then more of the building is in that area where they
Right.
can't
We
be
requested.
It seems difficult
requested. Okay,
Yeah.
to
got it.
build without having some type of a buffer. And 5 feet is just what the
Okay.
minimum historically we've considered.
Okay, so requested, not in code, but regardless, there are encroachments to the wetland setback. Okay, got that. I don't think I have any specific questions at the moment, but I might as we get further in, sorry.
Andy?
Um, I guess, one question I just have, I was wondering if this came up at all, in the bulk plane illustrations at the back of our set, they highlight the one bulk plane encroachment that's 328 cubic feet.
Mhm.
But I see lots of other places where it looks like it's poking through that little orange shell, and they're not listed in any of the bulk plane calculations. Did that ever come up? Are we not counting the other little encroachments, or do they not think those are actual encroachments?
So that information was not provided by the applicant of the additional encroachments into the bulk plane. So we would need that at
They
the final
would
site.
be,
Yeah.
Okay.
they need to be
It seems
counted.
like there are several, and we can ask the applicant what they think, of that, I guess. And then it's in terms of the offices versus bedrooms, which seems like kind of a big issue here. How do you determine proximity to the bathroom? How do you look at that? It feels sort of arbitrary.
It is. We have no definition.
Okay. Okay. So there's nothing in the code. It's kind of our own
Yeah,
interpretation of.
we look at it as if you
near.
have to go through another room or through a door and then another door, we would never call it in close proximity.
Okay.
When it opens up into a space that looks like it almost could be used directly for that bedroom, that's usually how we
So
define it.
this one's across the entry hall and around like down a hallway, across
Mm-hmm.
the entry hall. And your interpretation is that that's close.
If it was on the other side of the bedroom, so it wasn't available, it was like a master, like let's say the one on the right, there is the bedroom to the south, the bathroom was to the south of the bedroom, and there wasn't one right to the left on your image. But that one on the left of the image is pretty much right for the
Are you
office.
pointing at the left?
The right image, sorry,
The right image?
the right
But,
image,
but that's a bathroom that's through a bedroom, right?
correct, but the one,
To the right is
Yeah.
on down the hallway and across the entry. Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
yeah, and that's why we like to get your feedback at sketch plan on this,
Sure.
so.
Okay.
Ira?
No, it's like-
With
Oh, it's just, you know, I
the
can't get
bulk
more work done.
plane.
I mean, when I'm writing a letter of recognition, I need to be focused on the words I want to say.
Would that be correct?
Sorry, one
And can we have, thank you.
Right, in order to get to the bulk plane calculation, you know the heights of the building because you know where it's piercing the envelope, let's say. But so it's known or not known what the encroachment is, because you just asked that and you said, we don't know what it is yet?
Don't know what it is yet.
And then I was reading the engineering comments and I don't know if I picked this up right, but there was something about the elevation of the underground parking being too low. Can you shed some light
Yeah,
on?
we can address that.
Okay.
They have their engineer who believes that they're in conformance with it, and so that is detail that is gonna have to get fine tuned at the full application submittal when the referral goes out officially to
So I
the
read
engineer.
that the engineering letter was in disagreement with that. Okay.
And that, like that, just to give a point, that could lead to the height being different, even if we had the height, if their building is not raised a foot up like it's required to be. Now their building could be too high if it's at the max right now.
Sure.
So, but we haven't been given those details. yet.
Those are the two questions I had for now.
Candace, questions for the staff?
Yeah, so going back to the wetlands, so because those two blue areas are over the setback, they would need a new US Army Corps of Engineers letter. And that's really the only implication from the town. They would also need a wetland permit from the town of Frisco as well, which is reviewed by the engineering department. Engineering person.
But just to note that we have specific requirements in the town code for how and when you can disturb within the wetland setback. There is a list of permitted disturbance, 1 through 7. And a new building is not one of those 1 through 7. So we don't see how it would meet the code, but we as planning staff feel that that's not our decision interpretation to make because it is up to the town engineer. But we are not seeing compliance from our review, meeting the code for wetland disturbance in the setback. So.
One other question. So the conditional use permit was not on the table at the last sketch plan.
You could have discussed it because that was the big topic of you have a right on the conditional use permit to analyze the mass and bulk in the reflection of the neighborhood character.
Okay.
And so that's what we really focused on at the last one, and the comments were reduce your mass and scale. It's not fitting the neighborhood character, therefore it doesn't meet the conditional use criteria at this time for that one. Then now there's the other things. You also, for a conditional use, have to prove that you have water and you sanitation, everything exists. Well, we haven't even gotten to those referral comments yet, so.
Okay.
But yeah, it was discussed, but we've been very informal, just so the applicant can get general feedback till they invest all the money in moving forward. Now we think it's time for them to move forward. As
Okay.
staff, yeah.
So this is still not, we're still looking at the conditional use permit, but in the context of are those changes that were discussed last meeting the comment.
That's what staff requests. The applicant, I believe, based on a conversation or emails with Chris yesterday, is going to ask you to make a decision tonight on the conditional use.
Thank you.
Ira, you had another question?
Yeah, I did. I see that this application has one more unit in it than the last time we looked at it. Are they at the max number of units or could we see this? They are.
And they added on the additional unit because it's considered, they're calling it a deed restriction. We don't know what that's gonna look like, or if it's gonna meet our affordable housing guidelines, we don't know. But you don't count affordable housing in density calculations.
Sorry, I'll clarify too. Sorry, no, that is all accurate, but just hypothetically, the applicant can still come forward with 30 units if they're proposing matching more affordable and matching market rate. So they have the right to request more. So we can't say, no, they won't. We don't think they
Right.
have room, but they very well could come back with a bunch of 1 bedrooms and say, actually, we want bonus density for 10 extra units of density. We'll do 5 affordable, 5 market rate. And so that is a possibility you could see.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's.
Just a
Something like that would come back as a sketch plan though?
I would say it was a significant
Yeah.
enough change. It would have to come back to a new sketch plan.
just a quick clarification on, the fact that the deed restricted units don't count quote as density if they're properly deed restricted in accordance with, so they conceivably would be restricted in that way, even though we haven't seen a
Correct. It would
covenant.
have to be. One of them
Okay.
would have to.
Okay. Got
Yep,
that.
great question.
What was I gonna ask? Can you go back to the slide that showed the bedroom thing? So there is a building code definition for bedroom, right? And that one talks about there needs to be a closet. I don't remember what it says exactly, but I thought it said there needs to be a door, there needs to be a closet. Maybe you know what it says?
In proximity to a bathroom, any
Yeah.
one of those things triggers it.
Oh, okay, not, okay. So this doesn't look to me like there's closets.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
In a planning, we say and, so you can't have any of them. So there's a little difference between the building and planning definition of bedroom. A bedroom can't have a closet and it can't be in close proximity and the third one, sorry, I can pull up.
Closet, door, I think it's a door.
Separated space, yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm confused again.
It's okay.
So there is a definition in the town code,
Correct.
and it says what?
In close, the part of it that's under question is in close proximity.
Okay.
About is,
So any of those three things make it a bedroom.
yes.
Got it. Okay, so then,
So
Yeah.
we'll look into here when you get to the discussion, if you think it's close proximity in those examples or other ones or not.
okay, and then can you go back to the one with the table comparison? So the units, what is the maximum number of units that are allowed on this property?
19.
Okay, so that means that if there's 20, that 20th unit has to be deed restricted per the town code. Okay. And then my final question, I think when we were talking about height, you get plans that are to scale, like you could scale them to sort of figure out what the height is.
We could, but we didn't feel comfortable not having
I mean-
the floodplain identified or anything, or
Right.
the 1 foot level, the discrepancy between the engineer comments.
Okay, so, but if you,
The
if you
applicant
were to
thinks it needs it.
scale it,
Yes, it
what's
would
the
be a-
height limit?
We'll ask the
Okay.
applicant what they're at, whereas, I mean, obviously, they're assuming that it's under height, I would expect.
Got it. Okay, those are all the questions. Now we will turn it to the applicant presentation, if you want to come up to the podium and give us your presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Dan Tizaro, Timberline Law, on behalf of the applicant. Seth is going to talk here too, and we also have Ted, our architect, here to talk about some of the more design-specific questions or concerns that certainly maybe out of my wheelhouse talking about. But first thing I wanted to do is just address some of the questions and some of the little bit of the gray matter confusion that I saw. So just to make it absolutely clear on the record, there is no wetland impact here. We do have an encroachment into the wetland setback, as you saw, but there's nothing encroaching into the actual wetlands. Right now, it's only wetland setback. We understand we have to go through engineering and get approval for wetland setback encroachment. So that's the first big thing. The second thing regarding those bedrooms versus offices. So we absolutely intend to have those rooms designed as offices. There are no doors on them already. Whatever other steps need to be taken, obviously this is sketch plan, and it's good to have that conversation about what's, you know, proximity to the bathroom, what's close proximity. I guess it's how bad you have to go, but regardless, you know, we're gonna continue to design the inside and the floor plan to make sure that those are offices, because that's how they're intended to be. You know, we're looking at an age where a lot of people work from home. That's what the intent is. That's what the whole focus is of the design of the interior. So we'll continue working on that, but it is absolutely intended to be an office, not intended to be a bathroom, bedroom, sorry. In terms of density, so yes, we absolutely intend to comply with the town code regarding deed restriction and what needs to be done to get that density exception. So we are under density. Right now, we are proposing 18 units that are, we're proposing
18 market rate units.
18 market rate units, and then the 2 units, which are gonna be affordable housing. So, and those are being proposed volitionally. So altogether, there's 20 units, but out of those 20 units, 2 of those units will be deed restricted in accordance with the code. And the AMI standards, et cetera, that the code lays out there. So we just wanted to make sure that that's abundantly clear for everybody moving forward. You know, I know there's talk about whether or not the deed restriction, well, there's no point in doing it if we're not gonna have a deed restriction that properly restricts those. Certainly we don't want to go over our density by having deficient deed restriction, so that's certainly not the plan. In terms of this question of the vote on the conditional use permit and turning the sketch plan to the sketch plan review to a major site plan review, et cetera, I don't think that can even be done. That's certainly not what we're asking. This question of whether or not to vote was brought up, and it's, you know, replete in the minutes and everything in the records from 2 prior hearings on this. So this discussion's been had this whole time through, and, you know, the 6 conditions for a conditional use permit, this planning commission has already talked about, staff report has already talked about. We've never talked about changing this to a major site plan. We have no intention of changing it to a major site plan. Obviously, if you look at the materials, this is sketch plan type of materials, right? This is not major site plan type of materials. We just want to make that point abundantly clear. And so when we said we wanted to vote on the conditional use permit. And that really harkens to the real concern that we have here, and just the thing that we wanted to address is, when we look at the conditional use permit, really, it seems that the question as to what the proper question is in terms of conditional use permit seems to be getting conflated a little bit. So we have sketch plan. There's a lot of important design aspects. There's a lot of important feedback for us to get. I think that there's been great feedback so far. If you look at the design now and the broken up building and everything that's been done in response to the good comments that were made from the prior hearings, you can see that that's something that the applicants really taken part to and really tried to improve the product as we move forward. The two affordable housing units weren't there before. That's another significant improvement. We're trying to see what we can do to establish a pocket park or some more pedestrian ways within that southern section of the property, right? And I know that was another comment that was done. So we're really trying to improve that, and that's really what the sketch plan process is for. We appreciate it. The conditional use permit is the reason why we're here, and I think staff would agree with this. The reason why we're here talking about the conditional use is because of the fact that we have property right now that's zone PUD. Within that PUD,
Mixed use.
it's sorry.
PUD with an underline.
It's PUD.
Oh, sorry.
So it's PUD, and within that PUD, it specifies that this property shall be used and shall be developed in accordance with the MU zone, right? So with the MU zone, the minimum commercial density is 20% of the overall floor area. Here, we're saying we don't think commercial really fits here anymore. The zoning's there. So in order to go below the 20% of commercial floor area under the MU zone, and then accordingly the PUD, we have to get that approved as a condition of use. So really, it's a binary question. So a lot of these other things in terms of the design, in terms of all that, that's not really part of the conditional use. That's absolutely part of the sketch plan. And it's kind of tough when you have the two of these things going together. And I'm sure we'll run into this again during the site plan review. But the whole notion is, a lot of these things get conflated to what the question is. So really the question here, and when we talk about the one condition of approval for the conditional use permit, which staff has made a good point of underscoring as one that is their biggest concern in terms of compliance with the 6 criteria of approval. And it all talks about, essentially how does it complement and blend in with the surrounding area. Our point is, the question is really simple. The question is, how does 100% residential versus 20% commercial and 80% residential, which one of those two are more appropriate here? So the question isn't, okay, the bulking multifamily versus single family. Those aren't issues really for here. If you look at the PUD all the way back from 1991, that PUD made it very, very clear. Here, I'm reading this over here. I probably need to get my readers, unfortunately, now. But basically, the PUD, recital C, noted the fact that what the PUD was doing was taking the majority of the property, which was already at MU, tapering down the density on the area which we now know as residential. So taking that from MU and then specifically leaving this section as MU. So that was part of the bargain that was made. And it says it right here where it says benefits to the town, and it talks about the fact that a portion of MU that may be in conflict with adjacent developed residential property will be placed in permanent use for low density residential purposes. Instead of the potential for up to 77 dwelling units, it'll come down to 34 single family residences, etc. That's really relevant here because that was the deal that was struck. We're going to take this part of the PUD, which is the part to the west, make sure I got that right. So that's the part to the west where you see the single family homes now, and we're going to change that. And this part of the PUD, section E, we're going to leave as MU, and we're going to only operate as MU. If we could go to that second part, which is section 9 of the PUD, and it says, outlot E shall be controlled only by relevant portions of the MU zoning code and not by the covenants or the design review committee. So section 9 goes through all the design elements, all the restrictions, all the expectations, the homeowner association covenants, etc., that the part to the west will go through as part of the PUD process and subsequent to the PUD being adopted. Section E is specifically exempted for that. So, and if you can see throughout this PUD, what was intended is for this PUD area where the single family homes are now to be the transition between E and then the even less dense single family homes, I believe, to the west of that neighborhood that was being changed. So the whole question here then becomes, in accordance with this PUD, is it more complementary? Is it more in conformity with the neighborhood to have 20% commercial and 80% residential, or 100% commercial? That's really it, because the PUD, the zoning already controls, it's MU. It's not a question of saying, okay, since we're doing a conditional use permit, now we're going to take a look at this whole thing as if it was a site plan. That's absolutely not what it is. And if you look at the conditional use permit process, it ties into table 5.1 of allowed uses. So that's where we are at that, and that's where we really want to underscore. And even if you look at the master plan, the community plan, it talks about the notion of infill and redevelopment of established neighborhoods. This is from page 67 through 69 of the master plan, which specifically deals with the Summit Boulevard corridor. Which we're on the outskirts of, but really goes from the entry to town all the way through. So you can see here where it talks about the whole notion of, as things get redeveloped, you're going to see more massing, you're going to see, more development in that area. So it's going to move away from just single family. And certainly this property was never intended for single family. I don't believe anybody could show a single family multi-use development anywhere in the town or pretty much anywhere in the county, right? And so the whole notion is this is what was intended, and that's what will, continue to be part of the process. And the fundamental question here really goes down to this. We showed two different examples. So residential, commercial, a blend of the two, whatever it is. It's really a question of what goes in the building that's there. We absolutely have to meet our site plan standard. We're not suggesting anything to the contrary, right? We have to go through all those design elements. That's the important part of sketch plan that we're here with. But sketch plan and conditional use permit should not get conflated, because the question for conditional use permit is what goes in there. It's not, should we put single family homes here? Should we change around the design of this? That's not part of the conditional use permit. And if we weren't asking for removing commercial, then we wouldn't have any conversation whatsoever about a conditional use permit, right? That's the point. So you really have to say, but for the change from commercial, would we even be here? And the answer is absolutely, positively no. And I think staff would absolutely agree with that. So I just wanted to underscore those things for this commission, because I think it's a really important factor as we continue moving forward with this. So we totally understand, we're not trying to force the vote on the conditional use permit. The reason why we asked for a vote on the conditional use permit, as you guys might imagine, it really helps us determine how we're going to design this thing as we move forward to site plan. Design can be pretty expensive. A lot of you that are recognized here know. So that's why we asked for the vote. If that's something you're really reticent for, we understand that. Katie, if that's something that you feel is not appropriate here, we haven't had a chance to talk about it, we're happy to sit down and talk through these things as well as everything else. But our fundamental concern is we don't want the conditional use permit review to become somehow a de facto second round of site plan review, because that's absolutely not what it is. We have the PUD, we have the zoning under MU, and the standards under MU, right? It's not zoning, it's zone PUD, directed to be the standards of the MU, and we want to move forward with that accordingly. Beyond that, I think we can talk about some of the design things and all that stuff, talk about that. I don't think there's anything else here regarding that, but I just really want to address the whole notion of what we're trying to do here. I guess a few things that I want to address too, is that when we talk about the affordable housing that we're proposing now, when we talk about the pocket park we're proposing now, when we talk about a design that I think everybody agrees is much more attractive, we would have significant spacing to make it look like townhomes. With all those aspects, those are things that we can do when we're not putting in commercial, because commercial, obviously, like we all know, commercial is very uncertain at this point, right? And it's pretty anachronistic in this area, and that there's not any other commercial. So the question really becomes: is commercial more appropriate here, or should it all be residential? From that perspective, I think from looking at the minutes, I think that the direction we got from this plan commission last time is that they felt residential was more appropriate here. But ultimately, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth and you get to talk about that again today. But we certainly feel residential is more appropriate here. We feel that commercials certainly anachronistic, and we feel that if we can go to a residential development, we can throw in some of those things like the affordable housing, we can throw in some of those things like a pocket park, a pedestrian ways, which will help with the overall look at the project and certainly the design aspects that we talked about. And so from that, we appreciate it. We're here to answer any questions and discuss things. I'll kind of hand it off to Seth and go from there. Perfect. Team on there.
Yeah, I just wanted to see everyone again. You know, received a lot of feedback last time. I know this is the third time around. Just want to make sure the design is appropriate. Danny went into lengths about the conditional use, allows me to know where to go forward. It costs a lot of money to design a building of this size, bring it all the way to final site plan, and to get and have to redesign it is a very significant cost and takes a lot of time. So I just, you know, we're looking for some, you know, good guidance on what you're thinking. But I did want to pull up a little video, and it was included. It was a link, a Dropbox, a very large video, to give you a good idea. But sometimes it's not very easy to see on a piece of paper what this building has now become. So just give me one moment, and I'll pull it up. So here's a 3D animation of the new building. So it's now been broken up where you can see spaces, and that purple highlighting there is showing you the garage podium. And now there's spaces in between. Also, the buildings have different facades on it to give them their each individual looks. They're not stacked like they were before. And this kind of just pulls you around the building to give it a little more townhouse feel. You also see that on the north end as well. Different facades, spacing, different massing off. We also added this breezeway in between where people will be able to get to their different units. You can see that in this animation here. So now there's more separation and kind of operates as more 6 individual buildings. And that's on all sides, that separation is great. What we also did too that I could show you here, let me just pull this back a little, is, I know one of the major concerns was the height of the building. We are below that height. If it looks like it's popping through, I think that's just more of a printing issue. We actually have 2 feet below the 45-foot max height. To do a better job of showing that on the future plans. But I've made sure that no roof lines are passing through that 45-foot height. Another thing that Ira mentioned about the engineering comments. So I got clarity on this, and I also included a memo from Wright Water Engineer, a renowned engineering firm out of Denver who does all this stuff with floodplains. What the rule is you cannot have, well, if you want to get FEMA insurance, you cannot have livable space below a floodplain, but you're allowed to have non-livable space, which includes garage, elevators, lobbyways, nowhere is living. So that's why we removed that 19th unit that was on the bottom floor, and we just removed it entirely. And that was able to essentially allow us to drop the garage podium a little bit, bring up finished grade. So now most of the building looks like it's only 3 stories. I know there were some concerns about 4-story buildings. I did also submit an application, Marina Park. Depending on where you look at it, it is actually 4 stories tall as well. And that development, I included a picture showing the different sizes of that development, not significantly, but is larger than this development. And this development does have a lot of open space as well. It's 71% of the total lot is open space, which I know is an important requirement. We're only using 29% of the lot. And this also compares to the new workforce housing at 602 Galena. That whole site is being used for parking and for residential units. So here we're really maintaining our open space on this property. You know, I don't think we necessarily need to bring up finished grade because there are buildings around it that are 4 stories, but I think it does make it look nicer. It makes it look smaller, less massing. And, you know, another point too I want to make is that, you know, we could have asked for bonus units for the 2 deed restricted units, but we're not asking for that. I think it's a nice additional for the neighborhood. I've even spoke to a guy, I don't know if you saw this in the newspaper like a month ago, some guy who'd been looking for deed restricted for like 10 years. His name's Alex. I even called him out saying, you know, I have a unit available. So, you know, I think it does provide community benefit.
Thank you. We are gonna go and have the commissioners ask you questions, if that's okay. Ira, you want to start? Do you have any questions of the applicant?
I would say most of my questions are not to deal with the MU zoning, but there is something in engineering. We do know that there is some access to Highway 9. They talked about a driveway. Is that a pre-existing old driveway or something that went to Highway 9?
I don't, so that's where the pump house is, and there's a 30-foot utility easement there. I think that's ultimately what that is. There is a driveway on 200 North 7th Avenue that I plan on removing. It
Right.
doesn't go all the way across. But
Okay.
it's a large, like 1,100 square feet. Oh, that's, you did bring up another comment. So about that, the wetlands disturbance. Sorry to, yeah, I think it's important to mention. That's already disturbed. The building's already in the wetland setback. There is a large amount, there's a huge deck in the wetland setback. That driveway is in the wetland setback. And my ask is that I want to return those back to water quality setbacks, but just use a small little corner on the east side of the building just to access more parking, because I know that was a concern of yours last time around.
Right. And so the original zoning in this, we'll call it the neighborhood, I'm sure there's an overall map name. Is there any MU existing? Is there any commercial existing in the neighborhood at all?
There's no commercial amenity.
And would you know, is this the last lot? Are all the lots built out as we speak? Do you know that?
Yes, I believe so, yes. And the lots across the way, which are A and C, maybe those were given conditional use permit.
And so for the MU zoning portion of this subdivision, you're the last Indian standing that has MU on it.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
That's the end of my questions for the plan.
Candace?
I don't have any questions.
Andy?
I'm curious, you know, one of the comments that you've heard many times in this room was that the building was at least a little too massive for the neighborhood. You know, we've talked a lot about that, and now you've come back with a building that has more units. Can you tell me why you chose to add units to the building when we already kind of felt like the building was too massive?
So those 2 units did increase the massing. Let me see if I could pull.
That was my next question. What did that do to the square footage overall of the building?
It didn't change it much. So I'll show you this perspective. Let me share my screen again. I mean, you can also see that over here. But if we're looking right here, these are the 2 deed restricted units here, and there's one here. It actually pushed the building back a little. So it didn't really change. I guess it changes the massing a little off of west, but it actually created a little more step down rather than just going straight up to have that where the elevator core is. Now you have a step down with those 2 deed restricted units.
What did it do to the square footage of the building?
Increased to like 1,000 square feet.
You added 1,000 square foot to the building after.
But on top of already what the lobby was, and we shrunk the lobby too, because there's nothing really in that. There's not a lot of buildings where you have this massive lobby core area. So I said, let's make it a little less obtrusive. And then by doing that, I was able to add deed restriction on top of that.
But overall, the building got bigger.
A little bigger. Yeah.
Okay. And then, we saw a slide earlier talking about, and we see this all over town, as these single family lots get redeveloped and they get bigger, it brings the scale of the whole neighborhood up. And I think that's kind of what you were implying is that, the scale of the neighborhood is what it is now, but it may not remain that. Can you speak to what's available through the PUD for redevelopment on those single family lots? Are they being held to their current size, or could somebody come in and build a fourplex on one of those lots if they could get it to fit?
So going back to that, part of the recital of the town benefits that I talked about with the PUD, the specific purpose of the PUD, which was 1991, was to take that area to the west of 7th, right, where the single family homes are now, and change that to single family home type development rather than MU. So it left MU on this section E, and it was part of the specific negotiation that was made. It was part of the specific balance between the two that was made. And clearly, and there's even language in there that talks about the notion of transition. And so it was to take that area and use that area of those single family homes as a transition from the other single family homes which are further west outside of this PUD area. So use that as the transition coming up to this MU. So it left this MU. So those single family homes there, they could redevelop. Could they increase in scale or size? We can't speak to that, obviously. There's significant HOA documents that deal with design review and everything for that neighborhood is my understanding.
And aren't they, also limit the number of units? There was something about 77 units down to 34 units, so people couldn't come in and add units to their lot. They could come in and redevelop a larger home, but they couldn't necessarily come in and take a single family lot and turn it into a triplex.
Correct.
Because that would be adding units that are outlawed by the
PUD.
PUD.
77 to 35, I believe it is.
So redevelopment of this neighborhood to the west of 7th would not include additional units, maybe newer, maybe slightly bigger homes, but no more units could ever get added to those other lots.
Correct.
According to the PUD. Okay. And then let's see. I think that's all that I have for questions. Oh, actually, one more quick question. How wide are those breezeways that we've added all over this building?
They are 6 feet wide.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Jessica, any questions?
Yeah, and this maybe is a better question for staff. It's really based on Danny's Danny, you talked about how we're just deciding on the use here with the conditional use permit, but I'm looking at condition number 2 of a conditional use permit, and it does say the conditional use is compatible with the mix of development in the immediate vicinity of the parcel in terms of density, height, bulk, architecture, landscaping, and open space, as well as with any applicable adopted regulatory master plan or PUD. To me, I guess I read that as the actual details of the building, not just simply the use. So if I'm misunderstanding it, be happy for whatever your clarification is on that.
Sure. So if you take a step back, if you look at what that says, and it all talks about the use, right? So if you look at all those standards and you ask yourself, with all those standards, is commercial appropriate here? Is it more important to have 20% commercial here? Or is it appropriate to have the 20% of commercial be transitioned to residential and then have 100% residential, right? That's the conditional use. So if you look at the notion of, if we came in here with a proposal that did not have 20% commercial, I'm sorry, that it did have 20% commercial, we wouldn't be talking about conditional use at all, right? We'd be talking about sketch plan, and then we come with the site plan. The site plan, you'd sit here and say, does this meet this standard, that standard? And all those design standards are obviously really important. The way that it transitions is obviously really important, but the design standards is part of the site plan, which is ministerial. The conditional use really then focuses on that one question: what should go in that building? So to say that the conditional use but for the fact that you're talking about taking out that 20% commercial, now you're talking about a complete redevelopment of the project, and you're going to look at every aspect of the project. That's certainly not the panacea that it would open up, right? So, and it says use, so it's really a question of use. So it's not a question of structure. It doesn't talk about development. It talks about the use. And the big catalyst that has us talking about conditional use permit review at all is the use, the change in use from 80-20 to 100.
Yeah, appreciate that. Happy to hear your take on that, I guess. Yeah, I read that as kind of the details of this being the use that's proposed as all residential and how that in terms of density, height, bulk, architecture, landscaping, open space interact, but appreciate your take as well. Thanks.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One is for, I guess, Katie and Chris. If the deed restricted units need to be the standard deed restriction, that requires a lottery?
Good question. It would, as of today, if it was being built and we recorded a covenant, it would not require, sorry, a new unit does require a lottery, yes. Sorry,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so you wouldn't be able to pick your buyer.
Oh.
Then the other, you said something about how you're providing 29% lot of the lot is open space. That's really because it's the wetlands that are on the property.
That's true, but I could also do wetlands mitigation where there is, it's a route I do not want to take. But you could essentially go to a wetlands bank, a place that has wetlands and preserves them, and you could buy credits from them and then potentially remove wetlands. But I think that open space on North Second Avenue is such a nice little area. You hear the fountain out there, beautiful trees. I don't want to go that route, but it is an option.
And I wanted to bring one more thing up with that. So, we talked about that driveway and whatever it was, the historic driveway or the historic access way on the southern part of the property. Don't know if we have an aerial of that.
Yeah, I do.
The express intent here too, and Seth talked about this before, is to take that area and try to rehab it so that it's consistent with the rest of the wetlands area that has not been disturbed. So that area has already been disturbed significantly. Circling the mass around it over
And
there.
it's already been disturbed here where there's a
Yeah.
pre-existing deck. And even here where I was proposing, it's already been disturbed by, there's a concrete, a patio walkway.
Okay, but is your intention to be in compliance with the wetland setback and everything that's in the code? Is that your intention?
So I have no permit letter from the Army Corps of Engineers that says I'm not gonna disturb wetlands in my project. And this is not gonna disturb wetlands either. And the Army Corps doesn't have a 25-foot setback in their code. That's, I think. that's-
town does.
The town, the town does. So I am, even where this corner is over here, there is a horseshoe thing. So this is already all disturbed already. So my proposal is to return, I have a number up here. I'm going to reclaim like around 2,300 square feet back to wetland water quality setback. And then I guess the overall disturbance is 628 in these small corners. So the net disturbance we reclaimed is 1,642 square feet.
So, and just to address that question too, Lena, absolutely, we have to comply with every version of the code, right? That's what site plan is. So what we're talking about here is proposing a minor wetlands setback disturbance, which is much smaller than the amount of wetlands rehabilitation we're talking about doing here, right? Or restoration. But when we come to any of these questions regarding code compliance, absolutely, the whole issue here is compliance with the code.
Okay,
We understand that, right?
got it.
So which
So
means
Katie, sorry,
if it's a
sorry, Danny.
permitted wetland
just-
setback disturbance, okay, if it's not, then we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board.
Okay. And is disturbance of the wetland setback,
There's
Allowed?
7 criteria that you could comply with.
in a new building isn't one of them?
Is not one of them.
So.
It does
Okay,
not
so you
appear to
guys
be.
have heard, you probably have to, can't disturb the wetland setback.
Do about things that are already in the wetland setback.
You follow that part of code and submit your proposal and show it complying with that setback requirements and what's allowed for disturbance.
Okay.
Okay, have you explored putting commercial in this location?
Yes, I have explored that.
And what did you explore?
Well, one is it's very hard to lease commercial property these days. Price per square foot is very low. If you were gonna sell price per square foot to lease it, if you were going to sell it, you sell it at a loss. Because it costs you $800 a square foot to build. Maybe you could sell for $400 a square foot. I also just don't think it makes sense to have commercial in the neighborhood. I couldn't put the commercial in the back of the building and hide it. Who would ever buy or lease a commercial space? It would have to be right on 200 North 7th Avenue with signs, and I just don't think commercial really ultimately doesn't make sense in a small little residential neighborhood.
Yep, and I mean, I would agree with you, which is the reason why you're proposing a fully residential building, right? Yeah, and so it's a conditional use and it has to be compatible with the neighborhood ultimately. So I'm just saying, like, you have up here, oh, this could be commercial. It's like, you would not propose commercial there, even if.
No, I don't want to do that to the neighborhood and the neighbors.
Also, it's not commercially, it's not viable,
It's not
that's what you
viable
said,
either,
yeah, so, okay. Those are all the questions that I have. Do we open it now to the public for comment? Okay. So now we're gonna open this up for public comment. Anybody that wants to come to the podium and give us your name and address and your comment, please try to be brief and stay to 3 minutes. And if everybody already said the comment you're gonna make, you don't need to say it again. We've heard it.
And if you haven't signed in, go ahead and sign in while you're up there. Thank you.
Hi, Brian Coldyke. We live at 203 North 7th Avenue, which is directly across the street. And I think the major concern that I have that I'll just reiterate from December, which speaks to the bulk, the density and the height of the architecture that's there. Once you make that turn from Galena on North 7th and you cross the Frisco bike path, you're in a single family residential neighborhood. It is the marina structure is in your rearview mirror. And everything in front of you at that point, including the existing building that's there, is of minimal height, primarily single family. And so the secondary concern that we had in December that hasn't been addressed, there are 4 outdoor parking spots for guests. They have added 2 covered. But now that we are at 20 units, with all of those units having tandem spots, with the exception of a few in the back, my concern is that the guest parking will encroach onto the street. There are no sidewalks. It is a frequented walking path as it connects 2 or 3 different areas of the Frisco pathway. And it presents a safety danger to those. And now in the winter, you've got snow piled up, it's encroaching further into that street, and it just makes for a much less safe walking environment. And again, I would point out, 6 guest units, 6 guest parking spots for 20 units doesn't seem sufficient. So, thanks.
Thank you. Come on up.
My name is Paul Sale. My wife Cindy and I own the home located at 360 North 7th Avenue in the cul-de-sac. Thank you for the opportunity to give input tonight on this proposed residential development. I have 3 talking points to present. Traffic, street congestion concerns, compliance with River Pines PUD requirements, and compatibility with existing residential neighborhood. The only access to and from our home is via North 7th Avenue and Galena Street. Therefore, significant concern is increased traffic, street congestion. This project is proposing 50+ parking spaces, and when combined with the 44 parking spaces allocated for 602 Galena project, we're approaching the possibility of nearly 100 additional vehicles. Keep in mind, residents frequently walk to town via these streets, and there are not any sidewalks. The applicant has stated in letters submitted to the Planning Commission that a traffic study has been completed and that Seventh Avenue and nearby intersections will support the proposed project. Has that traffic study been submitted? There are a traffic study done in March last year for 602 Galena, which didn't include the proposed project or Seventh Avenue. That specific traffic study appears to have only evaluated the two intersections with Sixth Avenue, Galena and Galena Alley. There's nothing mentioned about possible impact on accessing Main Street, which we believe could present some significant issues. Hopefully, an additional traffic study will be required, incorporating the analysis of the impact on access to Main Street from the adjacent neighborhoods. Parcel for the proposed project is in the River Pines PUD as established, our Lot E. There are covenant and conditions dated May 5th, 91 with specific requirements. This application is stated more than one proposed project meets these requirements. Has that been verified? Listed maximum building height requirement is 30 feet. The height in the drawings is proposed December 5th is 45. The height of the current redesign submitted tonight wasn't listed. The applicant's attachment A for tonight's meeting compares the existing Marina Park complex to the proposed project. We believe this is not relevant comparison due to the location off Main Street and the proposed project existing within the boundaries of the River Pine residential neighborhood. We believe that any structure built on the parcel should be only residential. However, we also believe that for a CUP, the structure should be compatible to the existing neighborhoods outlined in Frisco Community Plan Item 1.1A. While the applicant has done a good job enhancing the architectural design aspects compared to the original building proposal, this current proposal presented has 6 separate buildings to try and break up the overall mass, still looks like one large building, since they are so close together and connected in some manner, which we believe is not compatible with the adjacent residential neighborhood. I've tried to be as concise as possible while covering a lot of information. Hopefully I've been effective in explaining my 3 talking points. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room want to come up to speak?
My name is Mike Gould, and we live at 201 North 7th Avenue. And so our concern with the project is basically one of your major concerns, the height. I actually took a tape measure, went over and measured. It's about 6 feet off of grade, if I'm correct right now. The road, the building is there. And then you go up another 20 feet. So if we go up 45 feet, we're going to be going up another 20 feet after that. That's really going to be large to look at. It is nice that it's perpendicular, because then you're leaving the south border available. This is nice, but it doesn't really resemble what is there. Well, the trees all have to do that. How are we going to do with, what do we consider grade? Are they going to have to put parking underneath so that they can stay within a reasonable level for us to be able to have view? And I don't know about you all, but I think you've moved up here for the view. And so once you lose it to a building, you've lost something. So those type of measurements are the things that are important. And the other thing, Brian, and I think yourself brought up, is the parking and the number of people that are going to be coming. We're going to, what do we have, 10 units back in that area? 2 persons per unit, maybe 2 cars. We're going to go from 20 cars to 60 to 70 vehicles. And that traffic's all going to be coming out on one end of the traffic. So you're going to have, it's going to be tight. It's going to have to be really considered. And that road is barely wide enough for 2 vehicles, especially when you have the snow plows. And when you have the snow plows, you're going to be pushing a lot of snow up into your driveway, which are they going to have someone there to move that for the 40 people that are inside, especially if there was an emergency? Where would those people, how would they get out? And if you're going to put the garage down, you're going to have a grade And so you're gonna have the snow flowing down that grade into the garage area. So it isn't an open, it's not an open area like that would be, depending upon your height. So those are the considerations. It's the amount of traffic. We need people to live they need somewhere to live. But when you go from 20 vehicles, maybe 10 to 20 vehicles a day, except for the contractors out there, to approximately 50. It's really going to impact driving. So those are, I think, our concerns. It's the height of the building. It's being able to access for the people who live there. We think the design has changed. That's great. But how many of you want 20 feet in front of your house? We'll raise it up 20 feet for your view. So take that into perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the room, in the chambers? Okay, anybody online want to provide public comment? Raise your hand. I don't see anybody raising their hand, so we will close the public comment. Oh,
Yes, I apologize. So my name is Scott Herbig. I'm the owner of the house right directly next to this west at 300 North 7th Avenue. And I want to state it a little bit slightly differently than what Brian stated earlier. So picture this. My ask is that you all go to the property at 7 o'clock at night this week, sometime in the next 2 weeks during the wintertime. You walk out of our house. There are no sidewalks, and it is pitch black because there's no street lights. It's a blind corner that this is proposed going to, and he mentioned 40 new, if it's 20 units, the average American house has 22 cars. That's 40 additional cars plus 6 parkings. That's any given time, a massive amount of traffic coming down there, more than doubling what we currently have right now. On the blind turn itself with no light and no sidewalks, there's at any given time 6 to 10 feet of snow piled up on both sides. We walked to Vine Street Social for dinner 2 nights ago. Awesome. Every person has to walk on the street because of these 2 facts. On the blind turn, there's also where the Frisco bike path comes in. So now we're talking about a traffic, 40 cars at any given time, all hours coming in and out, and the pedestrians only way to walk through that area because it does connect the other cul-de-sac with the other bike path, which is why we have it. Awesome. But now the only way to walk is in the street on a blind turn with no lights, and now we've just quadrupled the amount of traffic. Absolutely, we need to, and someone brought it up earlier, the Galena Street traffic study and this traffic study need to be combined into one traffic study to say, hey, if we've got 40 units at Galena Street and we have 20 units here, the impact of now 100 cars at any given time in a roadway with no sidewalks, with 10 feet of snow, and every person must walk on the street is just a recipe for disaster. In addition to the height requirements, I cannot imagine having this thing rising 45 feet, and that's my new view. We clearly bought the piece of property knowing that this, it was as is, and 100% would not have purchased our house had we had the structure that we're trying to impose now. The entire neighborhood, we keep saying neighborhood character. Well, I love that it was the architect that brought that up. How in the world can anyone say that a single family neighborhood, that's all that's there, and then this monstrosity have neighborhood character? It makes absolutely no sense to me. And they also stated, the presenter number 1 stated that there are no wetland encroachments, only in wetland setbacks. And clearly that was not the case on the blue line that showed. It just, in my mind, makes it difficult to propose something so large in a neighborhood that is so small. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else? Raise your hand. Seeing none. We will close the public comment portion of the meeting and move on to commissioner comments. Who wants to start? Jessica?
I guess just one additional question for staff. When does a requirement for a traffic study kick in, or when would that be applicable?
Yep, at the final site plan submittal.
Okay. Got it. Thanks. I guess just overall comments, I feel like the architecture has improved. I do, just looking at the criteria of approval for a conditional use permit, I don't think it's specific to the use. I think it does take in how the use's architecture interacts with the site, with which that criteria that I read. I still have concerns about neighborhood character. In terms of the offices versus bedrooms, you can't control how someone uses a room. I can definitely imagine a scenario where somebody uses that as a bedroom, whether it's designed as an office or not. And so I think those are my overall comments. I feel like we've provided comments at these past two sketch plan reviews. And I think the only thing that has changed is the architecture has gotten bigger, but we haven't addressed the concerns about neighborhood character, bulk, mass, those types of things. So I feel like we've given those comments, but those haven't been incorporated into the revisions of the design, which overall, like I said, the architecture has gotten bigger. In terms of the wetland setbacks, my understanding is that's just a technical thing. You do need to meet it. You're currently not meeting it. I do believe that if this does go forward, you will revise your plans to meet it. So I think those are my comments. Is there anything else that staff wanted us to discuss that I didn't mention?
Let's see. What are your thoughts on the breezeways between the buildings? I talked on definition of bedroom, the use of materials, and then these are the sample materials that we have. The metal would be used for the roof. So that's the only one.
That's a great segue for Andy. Okay. On breezeways. I know my specialty and it's not bad.
Yeah, I'd start off by saying the architecture has gotten better. I like the look of the building. It's the best looking building we've seen yet being proposed on the site. Can we see the 6 factors for conditional use? Can you put those up on the screen, please? Because I agree with Jessica. I think that and we've said this before, and I think that everybody in the neighborhood would agree that nobody wants to see commercial there. So that part let's stop discussing that. That's not part of the conversation because we all agree on that. There shouldn't be commercial on that space. Unfortunately, one of the other conditions that we have to meet to grant a conditional use is what we're going to get here in a minute, which is that it has to fit. I was hoping for is this one of them?
Yeah, number 2. Condition.
In the neighborhood character.
Compatible with the mix of development in the immediate vicinity. For one thing, I also agree. I don't think we're comparing this to Marina Park. Completely different project, completely different location. So comparing it to Marina Park to me doesn't really carry any weight. I'm comparing it to the neighborhood that it is clearly a part of. And this is the same comment we've said many times. It doesn't feel compatible with the mix of development in the immediate vicinity in terms of density, height, bulk, architecture. It just doesn't feel like it fits in that neighborhood. And that's why we've said it's going to be very difficult for us to approve a conditional use, even though we agree, I think, that we don't want to see commercial on here. That one condition makes it really difficult to approve the conditional use, in my mind. And so that's kind of a big hangup for me. You know, I hear the concerns about the visitor parking. That's a town code. They meet the code. Maybe we need to change our code, but that we can't hold them to something above and beyond the code. Traffic studies are interesting to me because you know, I've seen enough of them to realize that they don't really capture a lot of what you're talking about. They may come back and say, hey, the intersections are appropriate, but to me, that is a valid concern. It's a difficult one for us to deny a project on because if it meets the code and the traffic study checks out. But I hear your opinion on that. I hear your concerns, and I think that you know, maybe this might end up leading to some sidewalks and some streetlights. that might have to happen down the road to address some of those concerns. But if the traffic study comes back and the engineers, I agree it should include Galena. But if the engineers say that the roads work, that's not something we can deny a project necessarily on. But I share your concerns, and I hope that maybe some improvements to those roads can be part of some future upgrades to the neighborhood. But for me, I just keep coming back to these 6 factors for conditional use permit, and I don't see how we can say that it fits the nature of that neighborhood. So for me, that's the big one. The breezeways, I think it's an interesting concept. I don't feel like it reduced the mass of the building, which was the main concern. There's some more light coming through it, but not from the street, really. Maybe from the one view you're showing us as we're looking up those corridors, but only people standing in the wetlands are going to see it from that angle. So to me, that didn't really help reduce the mass of the building, which was specifically what we asked for last time, was to try to reduce the mass of the building. And if anything, the building got bigger. It's 1,000 square feet bigger. It's got an extra unit. It's got more parking. So I feel like you heard our comments and then got bigger. And so that's disappointing. We can't require you to come back for another sketch plan. If you want to take this to that final, a lot of the things that we have questions about, we're not going to see till the final. But to me, I would caution you about doing that with a building this massive, because it's going to be difficult for us to approve the conditional use.
Ira? Comments?
I agree with much has been said. The conditional use specifies a lot of ground, and just in agreement with what's been said, I'm more than happy to relieve you of a requirement for commercial. But that is just like the tip of the iceberg of these 6 categories, these 6 items. So beyond that, and then if we came back to going to the sketch plan part of it, going back to what's a bedroom, what isn't, it's Shakespeare. It's a rose is a rose. And I don't think that you are going to find 20 buyers that are looking for an office space. These 20 buyers are going to be using that space as best suits their lifestyle. And 20 of them are not going to have home offices. They're going to be bedrooms. So, that may or may not be part of this conversation. Like Andy said, I think the commercial application is a non-starter. I think everybody in the whole room believes that commercial shouldn't be there. And to my detriment, I don't understand, how do we ever get a 45-foot height limit? Where'd that ever come from?
Mixed use zone district allows for
45. Okay, so that was just a side comment. But like I said, the commercial part, I agree with Andy. I think it's a misplaced zoning, the way everything's been developed. And it sounds to me like, based on all the criteria relieving of the mixed use zoning, I don't think we're ready to vote on that today. Sorry.
Just Candace.
I'm gonna start with a very dumb question. So if they chose to do 20% commercial, do they still need a conditional use permit?
They don't, but they still need a site plan.
Okay, so the site plan would still need to be approved, but these 6 conditions go away. So we all agree, we don't like the commercial. I think I've heard everybody echo, but because that triggers this, we also don't necessarily, I think everyone has their opinion, but I would agree that this doesn't necessarily fit in the context of the neighborhood. But I don't know that I would want that over commercial. So that's one comment. I agree on this last meeting, but I agree that there's been improvements to the architecture. I think thank you for hearing our comments and trying to address them. I think that's an important step in coming back and trying to work with us. I think that's a good sign. I like the addition of affordable housing. I know it's something that we need, and you heard it. And so thank you for adding that. I agree with Andy that making things bigger is a little bit counterintuitive to what we were trying to accomplish. So mixed use is 45 feet. If they get a conditional use permit and it becomes 100% residential, can they still meet the 45 or does it then go down to the 35?
No.
It's still the 45. Okay,
Still
everybody,
45 feet.
everybody had the same answer.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think we've heard loud and clear the neighbors' responses. I think everyone would feel that way if they lived there, from the traffic to the height of the building to the proximity and the neighborhood character. I think we'd all echo that. So those are my like overall comments, office versus bedroom. I kind of agree with Andy's question of like, what is close proximity? I think I hear you, Ira, that like it might be hard to find 20 people that want that, but I think given parking where it is, just making the best use of the places, sometimes that whether it's a bedroom or a baby room or people use the space. I think if we're sticking strictly to the code, I don't see the proximity on a small tight units like this. I don't see that bathroom proximity triggering it personally.
Thank you. And my comments, I mean, I really appreciate the change in the architecture. I think it looks good. But the same comment echoed that by everybody, it's a good looking building, probably not in the best location. Because it's just big in comparison to what is in that neighborhood over there. And by the way, I'm your neighbor. I live in Marina Park. And I think my buildings are really good looking. And this would probably be more compatible with Marina Park. But as you're moving towards the rest of the neighborhood, I think you've heard us, that it's a good looking building in a location that maybe just can't fit it in there. In terms of the bedroom, I wonder, and this is food for thought for looking at Danny, but if there's a way to put something in HOA documents to sort of try to get at people not using that as a bedroom, if you want to insist on an office. I don't know. In terms of, all the staff needs and to address height at the final site plan, I'm sure you can get them that information. For the wetlands, I do feel strongly that I, want to follow the town code and I don't want to have disturbances in the wetland setback. So, there's that, and I thank you. I do appreciate the adding in some affordable housing. Obviously, we really appreciate that, especially if it follows the standard covenant that the town puts out there. Yeah. So those are my comments. Obviously, we're not gonna have a decision on the conditional use permit tonight. I don't think we're there yet, but you heard our comments. I don't think a commercial development would be viable in that location at all, so I don't think there's even a point in talking about that, but you do have to live with the condition of the conditional use permit. So somehow finding a way to be more compatible with the neighborhood. And then to everybody, to the public, thank you for coming. If you have questions, the staff is always available for questions that we can't answer because it's not really a dialogue here with the public. So just know that and ask them about on-street parking because I don't think it's allowed, right? Correct. No, so it wouldn't be an option. Okay, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda.
We have our town attorney hopping on the next one, and David has been patiently waiting for his turn in the audience. So if you don't mind just waiting, we'll let people log off, exit the room, and then let Thad hop on too in case he wants to speak.
Maybe take a couple minute break.
Does that work? Yeah.
Sure.
Must be there.
Okay.
Got it. Got it.
Okay, the next I'm, oh, hi, Dad.
Hello. Good evening.
Hi. The next item on the agenda, so I'm just gonna introduce it and then it is a discussion item. So this is a request for interpretation of condition number 5 of planning file number MAJ 22 001, which was a final review of a major site plan application for 30 units in addition to the Alpine Inn, which also had a conditional use request associated with it. I'll turn it over to you, Thad, unless you want me to, I'm not sure. What's the process here?
Let's start with this, Thad, one quick question as before we start the discussion, we have two commissioners here who are not present at the item. Should they provide feedback or should they not provide feedback during this discussion item?
I think it's fine for them to provide feedback. I presume they've received the materials concerning the prior decision, the minutes, the decision itself.
Thank you. And then I think the way we'll do this, I have some background information I've given you. I know you have not had much time to review it. If it works with everybody, why don't we take just 2 to 3 minutes, review what's in front of you so that you're in the loop on the old minutes and the letter. And this is what you are aware of that they had in front of them too. And then we'll have Mr. O'Neill come up, present what he's looking for an interpretation on specifically. And then Thad and or myself can kind of help guide you on if you have questions. Does that work?
Sure, except I have a question and now I can't find where I read this information, but or maybe when we start talking about it, at some point I read that there were 2 deed restricted units that meet the definition of with the standard covenant for the town of Frisco. Is there 2 units in this complex? Or I don't know where I read that, but I can't find it now, but
Yeah,
does it say that?
the answer to your question is yes, but not in the current phase.
Not in the current phase?
Yes, there are two AMI units to be deed restricted. The language, I believe it's in your notice of decision. The language was that the location of those AMI restricted units were at the option of the developer, the applicant. The 6 housing helps units per the subject condition were to be distributed throughout the development. I would note that this first phase is one of 3 buildings, and the applicant is providing 2 housing helps restricted units in connection with this building in this first phase.
Okay, so the 2 AMI restricted units, standard deed restriction units are coming. They're part of the 30, but they're just not
Yeah,
part of phase 1?
I believe they're proposed for the second phase.
Okay. Thank you. You guys have time to read through? Okay. I think-
Right. David, you wanna come up and speak?
David O'Neill, I'm the developer Basecamp Lofts and Studios. Before I get started, I want to, first of all, thank Katie. I don't know if you guys noticed an improvement, in community development, but from the outside looking in, she's been terrific to work with, and I hear that from my staff all the time. So Katie, thank you. Usually I'm not so positive. Chris, it's been amazing in terms of noticing. And we had a meeting with Thad last night at 4:40, where he suggested maybe it'd be helpful to get your guys' feedback. And at 4:59, somehow miraculously, not only did you have notice posted, but it was, seemed very complete. So thank you very much. It's amazing. And I'll even.
Also Kim. Yeah,
Okay.
let's give a shout out to Kim over there.
And I'll
Yeah.
also thank Thad. He's never heard this from me before. He has turned around the plat very quickly, and his attention to detail is really amazing. We appreciate his extra eyes on it. So, and thank you guys. You have better things to be doing for your night tonight. So thank you for taking the time. So we're here talking about condition number 5. And I think the scope is really limited to that. And that provides for a 30-day notice before we can sell it on the market. And so I'm going to talk about that. I want to give you some quick background. I think some of the planning commission know this, some of the newer members might not, but I think it's relevant. And that is that Bryn Gray, my company, by the numbers, we built approximately 400 deed restricted homes, Wellington neighborhood, Peak One neighborhood, and then Basecamp shops and residences. We've successfully created homes for over 1,000 locals in real neighborhoods with a sense of community in place. We're proud about that. And then Whole Foods Market, Thad asked me where I got this information. That I can't remember, but I'm under the impression that Whole Foods Market, which is a center we're very proud of, is generating about 20% of the town's retail sales tax base. And we think it's functioning well. ORB, if nothing else, kind of like that. So I think we've demonstrated that we deliver goods, and we care about these things. And in each case, we've been innovative. When we did Wellington, nobody had ever done homes around a green with detached garages. And so then in Peak One, we did a private-public partnership there. That's how, where nobody had really approached that way. The town gave us 13 acres straight off. And we figured out a way to make that work. And then Whole Foods, another town I can tell you, is really absolutely unique. A center like that would typically be facing the interstate, so you can get better rents. We really felt to create a sense of place to enclose it. So next time you go in there, you'll see it Outer Range Brewery. You go in there, and now you have Basecamp Lofts and Studios, which we really like. And I think your comments have helped us quite a bit. Really creates this sense of place that opens up on Peak One. So we feel good, about all those things. And then condition number 5, my recollection, my former wife will tell you sometimes my recollection's not perfect. My recollection, somebody can correct me on this, is that I had proposed this restriction. And the rationale for the restriction was, we're really committed to locals. I mean, we don't talk, we walk the talk. I mean, there's very few private developers that have the level of expertise that my team has that's been focused on deed restricted housing. And I think we've done a great job of it. And the reason we promoted that idea is we wanted to promote locals housing, but we didn't want to cloud or encumber the title, which would hurt market sale, if we had to do that. The second thing is we implemented this through the declaration, not a deed restriction. Again, we didn't want to cloud the title. So that's kind of, unusual. And lastly, and I think this is really important, this was created in the, if you can recall, the post-COVID kind of low interest rate sort of hangover period, where we're all under thinking, oh my God, these things are just gonna, these micro units next to Whole Foods are gonna go right off the shelf. I didn't do this long enough. Nothing ever happens like expected with them. So we'll get into that here in a second. So that's the background on condition 5. And why does local priority matter? I mean, for all the reasons you guys know in terms of keeping locals in the neighborhood and businesses in the center, it really matters. From my selfish perspective, as the owner of the Base Camp Shopping Center, if the 24/7 life in there is hugely important, you know, it keeps the lights on, it keeps vitality, it makes it a cool place. You know, if you talk to residents, of Base Camp shops, and residents, notwithstanding the trauma they went through from Mark McCrary's death, and by the way, they've been made whole, and I can't reveal to you, ask one of them if they can tell you how many dollars are in their reserve right now as a result of, we stuck through and got through it, but that's a lovely addition, and they love living there. It's worked really well. And so we like the lights on, we're committed to that, which is why we did this covenant. And we think it also aligns with, you know, our proven commitment to workforce health. So I think you'll find this really interesting here, and this kind of gets to the heart of the matter. The current sales says 73% of our inventory, which is 30 units, 22 units is still available from local buyers. Okay. And we currently have 8 contracts. And may I hand something out, Katie?
Yes.
In fact, what I'm handing out is just a kind of a summary of our marketing efforts. You know, I'll go through it. See, I think I have enough. Let me see. Oh, thank you. Well, the point of this is starting well over a year ago. We really got one marketing. We've you know, we've sold 100 homes. We have a lot of homes. You think, oh my God, it's just a slam dunk. It's not. You know, you work really hard, and so people may put their names on lists and be excited about housing. But in terms of finding somebody that's, you know, qualified and motivated, their leases line up, that, you know, life lines up from that. You know, there's a lot of peddling in there. This just gives me an idea of the peddling we've been doing in this project. We've got a website. I'd encourage you to look at it. We're really proud of the website. We're trying to figure out a way for people to order online. That hasn't succeeded yet, but you know, it's cool. And you know, I think, you know, we'll get there eventually. And there's a lot of information in there, just a ton. We've had some daily ads. I don't know if you've seen them, probably 2 a month for the last year. On the property, there's QR codes next to the project, so you pop on those and you get website, email. We have a list of about 2,000 people, the vast majority of which are locals, and so you know, you're getting spammed. That's us. We do that about every 6 weeks. Social media, we've got Facebook and Instagram. Our Instagram account has over 2,000 followers. Check it out. That's been doing really well. And then we've done these geo-targeted ads on various social media, and it's amazing. You can put in the criteria for people, and then you can geo-target, you know, when they're in Summit County, for instance. So we're doing that. The same with the Google ad campaign. And so the moral of the story is we have really worked it hard. And over the years, we found that a very small percentage of our buyers came through the Summit County Housing Authority website. A few came through the MLS, but mostly it was our direct outreach. We like that direct, you know, relationship. You know, people. In this case, we're working with Slifer, and that's because Michael Mershon, who's a key employee, left. Just we're getting, you know, keyed up for marketing and whatnot. So we've worked it really hard, and notwithstanding that, we're at a point now where we have 8 contracts, and we have 73% of our inventory still there, and that's the practical reality of it. So some key considerations here regarding the delay. We are now, unlike previously, and good job to Lena and other people, you know, working in housing in the county towns. There's 30 heavily subsidized projects through the list of Summit County Housing Authority website, and so, you know, so a local is going to be, you know, watching those. They can, you know, get in there cheaper than unsubsidized, you know, projects such as ours. High interest rates has been, you know, interest rates are at least double at least from when we originally conceived this. There's, you know, there's some people that are really excited about change that's just happened. But I think most people are feeling uncertain, no matter what their politics are. And so, you know, people don't go out and run out and, you know, buy homes under those circumstances.
I'm sorry, I'm lost a little bit. What is that? Where are we going?
So what I'm going to do is give you the essence. Thank you for.
Yeah.
The essence of this is there is a right of first refusal
Okay.
on 22 of the units. You would ask the question, 6 of the units are subject to the housing health restriction, only 2 in this phase. 2 are subject to the standard deed restriction. I cooked up this idea on the other 22. Why don't we just do a kind of a right of first refusal light? And so the case that I'm trying to make here is things have changed dramatically since we did that. And so when we did this, we thought, they'd be lining out the door, and so it would make sense to have, give a priority to locals. As the market's demonstrated, that has not been the case. We've got 22 units, still available after this sort of aggressive marketing. And I'll get to the punchline. Is that helpful, or in terms of?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And then, so basically, my expectations will do about 2 units a month. And so it's gonna be easy. We prioritize locals. If we get, just we're all over. Out of the 8 contracts, 1 is a local, and so we're covering their, lock fees, since we've had some delays and whatnot. So we're all about that. The timing is, so as it's set up now, right now, when we record the plat, which hopefully will happen within a week or 2, when we record the plat, you kind of nod your head, knowing the other number, that's a positive.
Well, you're making good progress. Now it's progress.
But so when that deed restriction is recorded, we're desperate to close, the contracts we want right now.
You need a plan.
We need to record a plat.
You just said deed
Restriction.
Well, we have to record the plat, which, so that can speak to this, which is essentially, in my view, a condo map.
Yeah.
That creates the condominium units, but I think it's been called a final plat. And that can, whatever it is not so important that to clarify that. There's an instrument that needs to be recorded. And when that is recorded, then the way this is interpreted now, there's 30 days before we can have a closing. And so the point I'm trying to make here is, it's not necessary in terms of the original intent of what we've created here. That makes any
What's
sense.
not necessary?
What's necessary, so when we record the plat, right now, we can't have a closing for 30 days.
Correct.
And so, okay, what does that accomplish from the town's perspective? Not much, because we've got 22 other units that are available right now. What does it do to us from our perspective? Well, if we delay further, we might lose those 8 contracts or some portion of them, which is a big deal in this market. We've worked awful hard to get them. That's number 1. Number 2,
Wait, before you move on, just so that I'm following, you have to record the plat in order to actually sell the condo.
do you want to speak to that then, or?
Yes.
But like, what's the 30-day thing?
Is the right of first refusal, correct?
And that can't start until it's recorded. They're already advertised.
Well, hello, exactly. That's my point exactly.
I know.
So you're under contract on.
Advertised for a year. We've been working it really hard.
So sorry, just so I understand. So you're under contract on 8 of the units, but per this right of first refusal, you can't close until 30 days after you record the plat.
Depending upon how you interpret it, that and I could spend all night over beers debating.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, how about we hear from Thad, if you don't mind? Thad? Turning the floor to you.
I understand that Mr. O'Neill is under contract on some of these units. I think Mr. O'Neill understands that our subdivision code doesn't allow someone to be under contract for a unit until such time as a subdivision plat is filed. So
Can't
that's
even be under contract.
can't be under contract unless there are very certain provisions in the contract concerning the contingency of a failure of the approval of the subdivision. I can give you a code site if you're interested, but it's really sort of an aside. The plat and which creates the boxes of air we know as condominiums, along with the declaration of covenants, that concern those condominiums all get filed at the same time. The condition of approval of the planning commission, number 5 that we're talking about, says that the remaining 22 units shall have a 30-day right of first refusal for residents of the 10 Mile Basin, which shall be written into the declarations of the HOA. That's the condominium declaration I just referenced, and reviewed by the town attorney at the time of condominiumization. So from a logical perspective, you know, that 30 days doesn't start running until such time as, you know, you've got it in the declarations, you filed units that you're lawfully allowed to enter into contracts and sell. Now, having said that, I also note in the record, and, you know, the decision, I think, as you all know, was October of 22. About 9 months later, there is a writing to Michael Marchand Lamont, development manager of Bring Gray Partners. It's from Emily Weber. It reads, it starts out saying, Dear Michael, in response to your proposed right of first refusal process, in order to satisfy special condition number 5, listen to the notice of decision, community development agrees to the following. And if you look through that, it's all about what the developer was to do prior to the time of filing of the final plat, right? Because if you look at the second bullet point in this, all documentation of sales and the information above shall be provided at the time of final plat, in addition to the original requirements of special condition number 5. It seems to me there was some realization that the technical requirement was going to be kind of harsh, not start until the 30-day clock doesn't start running until the filing of the plat. So there was some accommodation proposed by the developer and apparently accepted by town staff, under which tracking information was to be provided, apparently to meet this 30-day right of first refusal, at least in spirit, if not in letter, prior to the filing of the plat. My understanding of the applicant's request today is apparently that you consider his efforts as described sufficient. That is up to you. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I failed to point out, if you look at the last 2 pages here, we were required to keep detailed records. So this is the detailed records. The letter that I referred to, and thank you for bringing it up, that refers to the first trackers. Here's a list of every first tracker. A first tracker would put down $250 to get priority when the units, you know, were made available. And so that provides a detailed listing of the trackers. Locals got priority on that. But out of the first trackers, I think you got 2 contracts. And I have to tell you, it's the darndest thing. Typically, when we have these, put down $250, and then you get priority, people would either buy a unit immediately, or they'd ask for their money back. And we still have 30 people hanging out there who haven't asked for their money back. So, long story short.
So, sorry, so this, you're talking about this list?
Right.
This list, and so was that given to the staff?
No.
You have a
But it
list.
says, in my offense, it says it's supposed to be delivered concurrent with filing the final plat. Is that what you're gonna say?
Correct. No, I was gonna ask if you had a list that has all the bulleted points that Emily had asked for, if you have that list.
You know, yes, probably not, Katie.
Okay.
What we do is we try to streamline it. We get the name, we get the phone number, and we get the email address. And so Michael Marchand, I have no, what's missing in that email chain is what Michael said, sent Emma. And then what's missing is, you know, Michael acknowledging, saying, oh yeah, that sounds good. And then Michael got a great job as head of development at Steamboat, left us, you know, kind of in the lurch. That's why I'm standing here.
I guess I have just a general question. What's the purpose of a deed restricted unit that is available for a local for 30 days? Is that just so a local would have an opportunity to buy it? Is that to incentivize a developer to?
It's a priority.
It's a priority, but it doesn't alter the price. Like you
Right.
could still have a condo unit, you know, a 2-bedroom condo unit for $2 million and say, oh, locals have priority. Yay, I built a deed restricted unit. To me, that's not really a deed restricted unit. That's like, sounds nice, no offense.
That are
But it's-
deed
I don't think that
restricted,
is the
but
deed
the
restricted.
22.
That's why it's in the declaration.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, so when we count, deed restricted units, we don't call these deed restricted units.
No, yeah.
These are the other units.
Okay, these are market rate units.
It's the right of, so, okay, correct me
Okay.
if I'm wrong. All 30 have the right of first refusal thing, right?
I'd
No?
say a better way to put it is 8 of them are subject to deed restriction. and
Yeah.
22 are subject to first right of refusal.
Okay.
But the 8 that are subject to a deed restriction are also
No,
subject
it
to?
doesn't make any difference because they will absolutely be sold to locals.
Oh, I
So
see,
it doesn't
okay.
have
More
more
stringent
stringent
requirements. Housing helps.
Right, those
You
have
have
to
full
be.
deed restriction.
And 2 have full deed
And
restrictions.
22 are the right of first refusal.
Okay.
And the ones that you've sold, the 8, are
Under
the
Yeah,
right
they're
of,
in contract.
under contract, sorry, are the right of first refusal ones. Yes.
That would be correct.
And so the,
Okay, and how, and those people, how did you select, I guess, how did you determine that they are local?
they're not.
They're
They
not.
just, so these
Oh.
lists that you see there, if they were local, we go, great, fantastic. If they stepped up, they get priority. And I don't care about 30 days. We wanted locals in there. But no local, one local stepped up. And so we're free to go ahead and sell it. And so we went ahead and put it under contract. And so the question is, you know, the essence of the question really is, what is the town benefit when the plat is recorded and we have the right to close on units? What is the town benefit by encumbering, you know, slowing down the closing by 30 days when we've got 22 other units available? And we'd love to have local step up, but there's 22 units available and.
But it doesn't sound like you've been working with the town to make sure that those first 8 units were sold properly, I'm guessing. I mean,
Under contract.
sorry, you know what I mean? We're put under contract with this, the 30-day really being open only to locals.
They're open, all of them are open to everybody.
Yeah, right.
And locals can step, if there's competition for 2, a local gets higher priority.
So you hit the nail on the head. It's about, the reason we did this, we expected to be intense competition for these units.
Yeah.
Without the competition, you go, okay, what public purpose? Now, in terms of me, I'm trying to hold on to 8 contracts and I'm trying to fund, you know, subs, you know.
Yeah, I think the question is, where does that 30-day timeline start? Because you're
that's-
thinking it's when Thad records the plat,
Well, that's what Thad thinks.
or that's one comment. One option is when Thad records the plat. The other option, like we see in real estate for a lot of right of first refusals, like for HOAs, they offer it to like other people in the complex. And it's when it goes under contract that triggers, because then there's your contract price. There's like, hey, it's open on the market. Really, it could be anybody who sees anything listed. That's really their time to raise their hand, right? But sometimes it starts when it's under contract because now you have a market rate option. So even if, so the other option would be when these went under contract, you started your 30 days.
No, the 30-day is 30 days for only people that work in the community to purchase the units.
No, I don't think that's what it says. I think it says David can go to contract with you and you don't live here, you're not a local. And then in a simple world, the clock would start ticking once you two sign a contract. And that gives me a local to come up and take your contract away. But you're saying that there hasn't been that kind of fight. Are you saying that?
Yeah, the other thing I'm saying is, I think it triggered, may I finish my thought that?
Sorry.
Yeah, I do have a comment. If I may.
I would say, in my mind, it is vague. In my mind, once we start marketing it, and, you know, language we've been working on, the covenant would be once in the MLS or whatnot, but once, in my mind, once we started marketing it, locals knew it was there. And we marketed hard, so anybody's interested, great, if they showed up, we put them there. But it's irrelevant because now we're at a point where there is a sufficient demand, it's not like they're in demand. We got a huge need to try to save these contracts, get it closed. There's 22 units left over. Everything will function perfectly as originally discussed. Once we get through these initial closings, there's this kind of gray transition period. And I think it's important just to throw one final caveat and then that we innovate, every project we do, we push the envelope, right? We tried something. And you know what? We can't anticipate every project we've done. there's always, oh my God, we didn't think of that. And every time we come back to council or plan commission, we go, hey guys, we got to tweak this or that, can you help us out? And 9 times out of 10, they go fine. And we've delivered the goods in every single one of those projects. That's what I'm here today saying, guys, for this first batch of closings, can you help me out? Can we tweak this? And then, we'll get into, a standard regimen. It's not going to make any difference in terms of locals getting into the project. None. And we want locals there. It helps the shopping center. I'm sorry if that.
So I guess what are we having a discussion about tonight? I mean, because.
Is the 30 days already been, or can we waive the 30 days from the plat and let them go ahead and close on these 8 contracts, even though technically they're supposed to wait 30 days? They want to close
I think that's pretty
immediately.
well stated.
Okay, but we're not making a decision or a recommendation, so you're just gonna hear 5 people's different opinions.
Well, I think we can make a decision,
No, we
especially
can't,
with that here.
I think that the planning commission is entitled to interpret its condition. I do want to briefly address the comments on right of first refusal. The rights of first refusal, air quotes, the rights of first refusal that have existed or are referenced as such within our existing standard covenants have never been true rights of first refusal, right? As a couple of you apparently know, a true right of first refusal requires an offer on a property from a third party, and then you go to the person with the right of first refusal and say, hey, I've got this offer, take a look at it. You gonna give me this or more? Right? That's never been the case in our covenants. What the town has referred to as a right of first refusal is nothing more than the 30-day priority period is essentially a prohibition on sale of a unit in the first 30 days after listing it on the MLS or otherwise, making it publicly, advertising as publicly available, in which you can only sell it to residents within the requisite area. But just for a point of clarification, they've never been true rights of first refusal.
Does this follow the property? Does it go through this process every time it gets sold?
Yes.
Down the road?
Yes.
Third, fourth?
Absolutely.
Because it's part of the HOA document.
After
Yes.
that, there won't be a problem. These first closings are what create the issue, because the plat's recorded, and, do we have to sit around for 30 days? But after this, everything will track.
Okay. And really, you just want 8.
I hate to
Sounds
tell
like-
you this, what I really need is 3. 8.
3 might
8
go
would be
away.
Good, but if you said, we'll waive it on, 201 and 102 and 103, everything will fall into place in the rest, and that would be the godsend.
But nobody is really winning. The people that want to buy are under contract. You want to sell.
If they want.
And if there's a local that wants it, there's 14 other units.
Give them priority, even if this wasn't here, because in my view, it creates value by having the lights on and people living there all the time.
Dad, you just said that we have the right to interpret our own condition to, if we interpret it one way, but we understand that maybe it does need to be tweaked right now, I
think in some ways, the town has already
Change it.
interpreted it one way under the
Okay.
June 23rd, 2023 letter, right? We've said, hey, we appreciate you bringing forward your proposed process, working with the town of Frisco to ensure all conditions of approval are met with your development. The last condition is that you're going to bring all of this information about the marketing and include things like the prospective owner's existing address, the prospective owner's employment, the prospective owner's employer address, for obvious reasons, right? The commission was looking for some assurance that there had at least been some effort to keep track of where these people came from, if not an ability to actually sell to them within that time period. So I guess my thought is, in some ways, I think you have interpreted in this way. And the question in my mind is, are you satisfied as to the 2 units that the applicant is requesting that you essentially bless the sale of as having met the requirement? That makes sense.
So is it because the right of first refusal language, or quote unquote, lives in the HOA documents and you did not, you did not review the HOA documents because it wasn't a plat, because that was associated with plat?
Well, no,
Is that-
I have reviewed the HOA documents along with. the
Okay, but
plat.
they don't officially exist until they're recorded?
Correct.
I've got the documents, he reviewed them, but typically you do the documents in the condo map, at the very end of the process. And the curious thing is, there's lending requirements in terms of pre-sales and all this stuff, so I'll take responsibility. It's not very, as I said before, you innovate and you get some things right. This was not clear. It does create a problem for these first, ideally 8, but we can live with 3 closings. After that, we can make it work.
So I'm still, I'm a little befuddled. If the clause wasn't there, but the map, the subdivision not yet platted, right? It's not recorded. Am I saying that pretty close?
Right.
You still couldn't close, right?
Correct.
I have nothing to
Right.
sell.
You have nothing to sell till it's closed.
Right.
And I think I heard technically you're not even supposed to go to contract until it's platted. But
Not without certain conditions.
now without
As
certain
long as it's in the
conditions.
contract.
So if we lessen the stipulation for 3 units, how quickly could that close happen on your part?
But in the best case, and Chris is all over this, I think the 18th or so, we would have completed our final plat notice requirement, different notice than this. And boom, we would, hopefully have signatures by then. We'd record that straight away and we'd close straight away. Boom, that day.
And those units are done?
Those 3, yeah, they're done.
Okay.
They've been
So-
walked through and everything.
How do we know that you waited 30 days before you sold it to somebody doesn't meet, isn't local?
The only way you know that is that we've been marketing these this is amazing if you go through this aggressively for a year. And so if any local showed up, we would have sold them a unit. We sold 1.
And there are still units available.
And there's still-
Right.
remain
there's
available, So we're
73%
not
of units are still
protecting any
available.
locals.
They've been on Zillow or whatever since July.
Yeah, yeah, I guess to kind of maybe try and rephrase my question, that, because I was on the commission when we made this decision, and I would interpret our decision at that time the exact same way you're describing it. You need to start the clock at once it's platted. Now, what we're hearing, I would be willing to give maybe those 3 units, but can we do that even though I still interpret our original condition to mean exactly what you're saying? But
Well,
if we would be willing to change our mind, can we do that? Or do we have to
Well-
stick to the condition as it was approved?
I guess my response to that would be, I think in some ways the town has changed its mind, right? Evidenced by the June 23rd, 2023 letter, right? Clearly that letter is anticipating the meeting of this condition number 5, good, bad, or indifferent, right? I don't know if it was discussed by planning commission thereafter, if staff brought it forward, I don't know. But I do know it exists. I do know that what was sent to the developer clearly anticipates, look, we want you can meet that. Essentially, it's saying prior to the filing of the final plat, you can meet your 30-day right of first refusal requirement in this manner.
Actually, I would argue that, with the exception of not providing the employer name and the address, that first track list, I would argue, we actually technically fulfilled what's laid out in that.
Well,
letter, even though
with
we-
with due
the
respect,
employer
that's the
name
only
and-
information that the town really wanted.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got
Exactly
everything
right.
except what mattered to the planning commission for purposes of enforcing the condition.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. That really is kind of important.
You're saying it's, what's important is to know where they live.
The employer and the employer address. I mean, I've read through these minutes. It all talks about local workforce housing. I see that there's a word resident in the condition, but I think everything that was talked about that night was about workforce housing.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
None of this is inconsistent with that.
When did you go under contract with these 3
Well, the
or
first
8?
ones probably would have been middle of, July, August, I would think. They kind of dribbled in. Most recent was within the last week or 2. But the
What are these units listed at?
495,000. I'm looking at one of
well,
them now.
the contracts we have right now, I think there's some at 420 and some at 460.
And these are 1-bedroom units?
Those are the studios.
Okay, studios.
So technically, if this was like what you guys came up with as how you're gonna how we're gonna deal with the 22 units and the right of first refusal. Is it fair to say that technically you didn't meet what the town wanted?
No, because there's an assumption there that we agreed to that. There's what's missing in that email chain is whatever Michael Mershon sent to Emma. And then Emma responded and said, well, here's our agreement. Well, I don't see an email coming back and saying, okay, that's fine with us.
Well, we don't make agreements about, we don't make agreements about interpretation of conditions, David. We accept proposals and we say, yeah, we think this meets the condition. So we weren't looking for a binding agreement, and that's not the argument being made.
Okay, well, Lena's just asking if there was an agreement there, and what I'd argue is, I don't know if there was or wasn't, but even if there was, I think we have provided a ton of information here in terms of keeping track of the first trackers. It's not complete, and it was requested there, but it's almost all irrelevant because if the local shows up.
But it's the pieces that are missing are the most important.
Well, I know the most important is.
You have this list of like just people. Okay, that's great.
Did you say all but 30 have gotten their refund from this list?
No, I'd say out of the, I don't know what the number is, 33 of first tracks. I think maybe 6 have gotten refunds and the rest haven't asked for refunds. We keep, emailing them every 6 weeks.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is there some reason, David, that you cannot provide this information as to the 2 or 3 individuals that you currently have under contract?
No, I can tell you, 2 of them are market and 1 of them is.
No. All of the information and the bullet points on the June 23rd letter, right?
You're saying on the 3 that are under contract, can we provide the detailed information?
Yeah.
Of course. Do that by noon tomorrow.
Okay.
And what you're saying then is
Which is
technically
prior to
compliance with that.
prior to the final plat.
Yeah.
So even though they haven't provided that information yet, the clock hasn't started.
Right.
Hasn't clicked down to 0 for them to provide that information, it seems, right?
Yep.
Because it has to be provided by, at the time of final plat. We're not there yet. So if he provides it tomorrow, then he's met your concern?
So, okay, so tomorrow you submit this spreadsheet, but with the employer information. And that's the first day of the 30-day period?
No,
No.
that information, that spreadsheet is to provide the name, the inquiry date, the unit number, the listing date, right? That's what starts the 30-day clock running, is the listing date. And then the additional information. Prospective owners.
Okay, but these people that are on this list aren't necessarily interested in purchasing, right?
Thus far not, but I don't know why they don't ask for their $250 back. So my guess is a few will shake out of that group. And I think, going forward, I think, we can provide better record keeping to, comply with that email. I don't think that's going to be an issue. But the bottom line is, we want locals in there. Any local that wants to buy a unit, we will sell them a unit. We've got 73% of the inventory left. We need your help on 201, 102, and 103, so we can record a plat, we can close. And technically, it's a little messy, I'll admit, and it's, I'll take responsibility for that.
Okay. Do we have enough information to have a discussion, I guess?
Sorry. The 3 units under contract, are there units available that have the same listing price as they were?
Yes,
Just comps still available for the same price?
I'd say yes.
LS.
Or you would match the price if you had to.
Well, life's pretty complicated right now. If I had to go, oh yeah, well, man, I don't know what that means exactly. It's kind of confusing.
There's a studio for less than what's pending and there's a 1-bedroom for less than what's pending. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, to me, we're in the discussion, I guess. But to me, regardless of, I think there was an original intent that you're reading, but I don't understand who we would be protecting necessarily by enforcing it on these 3 units. There are units available for any local to buy. All of those, they'll give 30 days from now on. These 3 units, by jeopardizing those, there's 3 families or people out there who are hoping to get, they're going to be out of their other place. They've been banking on this. By saying, no, you've got to wait 30 days. Who are we serving?
Okay, so it's, I guess in my mind, it's not about that, then it's about, you told us you were gonna follow a process and do things a certain way, and now you're sitting here saying, I didn't follow the process, right?
The process
Can
was
I
a little
answer that?
unclear.
But that's all we had to work with.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
I think that is well stated. And I think anybody that's worked with David O'Neill over the last 20 years, particularly staff people go, you don't follow a process. But the measure is look at my projects when they're done. And look at how people feel about them, and look at the resale value, and look at the revenue they generate, look at the sense of place we create. And it gets messy sometimes. And I don't know how to do it any other way. And so in this particular case, you're exactly right. The process is not what we want. We'll straighten out after these 3 and we'll nail it. But I think you're exactly right. We've got a local who's living at the AC Marriott. We're paying for it, who would like to get in a unit.
And that's somebody that lives and works in Summit County?
It is.
Okay.
But then why would we need I'm confused, if you have a local that's one of these 3?
Just write down his
Right now, I
address
can't close
on your list.
unit. Well, maybe I could close on that
In the
unit.
local, you would be able to, right?
I guess I could close on at least that one.
Mhm.
Okay.
Is that one of your 3?
Yeah, it is.
But is our issue that we don't have the list with all this information?
Yeah, but let's say, I'd rather go 201, 102, and 103, because Chris may look at it and say, I think he's an ophthalmologist or something, and say, oh, well, his practice, I don't know, he might technically all of a sudden not hit. Oh my God, we're doing the right thing, we're creating something that's great, we're trying to provide a bunch of housing, so we can live with 201, 102, 103.
So you're paying for someone to live at the Marriott right now? Is that what I understood? So you had a contract that had basically a move-in date?
I'm not contractually obligated to pay for their living expense, and I'm not contractually obligated to pay for their extensions on their loan. And that's what we do when it's locals. We kill ourselves to try to make it work for locals, and that's what we're doing in this case. We're sucking it up.
So one of them is this local and you're doing all those things that you just said for that local?
Yeah.
Okay, I just have a question, just to one more question, and then I think we can discuss and move on with our lives. When, after this final plat, like when the subsequent sales, how do those work? Just so I can have a comparison for what's going on here. So, your ophthalmologist, I can't say the
Ophthalmologist.
your eye doctor, that's living at AC Marriott, that's a local. He buys this unit and then in 5 years he moves. How does that process work with the right of first refusal, as we're calling it?
The declaration has language in it, and so staff, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, I think we're almost there in terms of better language that's more precise than this. And so the declaration covers that, and so they're on notice that they need to follow that procedure through the declaration, and if they don't follow that procedure, town has certain remedies.
So essentially this will hit the MLS, and the moment it hits the MLS for 30. Okay, are you a realtor?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Will you walk me through this process?
Yes. I'm saying 30 days is a long time to give
Are you
people,
kidding? I can put spikers all over me. They go, what is the matter with you?
but it's too long.
To me, yeah.
It's a long time, because when you want to sell, then let's say you take 2 months to get a contract, our average time right now. Then you wait 30 more days before you're sure that contract's going to move forward. Because on the 30th day, somebody else, a local, could come in and say, actually, I want to buy it for those same contract terms.
So are you under contract in that first?
Right,
No.
Pat? No.
No, that's not right. They're just not allowed to sell to anybody other than somebody who meets the requirement as a local for 30 days, period.
But
Can
you
we
can
call
be
it
under
something
contract.
But
Can you call it something different rather than right of first refusal? It's more like
I
priority.
wish we would. I've been saying it for years.
Suggestion, I think that's a.
Priority. Well,
A local
but-
priority. No, I agree. It
We
has
do
appeared
that.
that way in our documents for years.
Much better.
But, okay, I guess my question, and maybe this is for you, Thad. So this next sale, it'll hit the MLS, and then say somebody from Louisiana goes under contract. They could still go under contract at a certain price. The unit just can't be sold for that 30 days. Is that correct?
Close.
Okay, so it can't close.
Not that it can't.
Can you
close,
even
it
list
can't-
it then? Like,
You can list
You
it.
can list it, but during those 30 days, you can only sell it to somebody that, you know, is a. So if you sell it to a worker on day one.
Great. If not, you're just in a contract with somebody else doesn't have a closing date for at least 30 days.
I guess, yeah.
I would say in the real world,
You should only be.
I think you can be under contract, it just can't sell.
Well, that
If you
contract,
close
I
a
think to me,
contingent contract, fine, but like.
yeah,
does.
a contingent contract that says provided the unit is
Nobody
not
else-
sold
There's
within the
nobody
first
else in
30
this,
days.
yeah.
Yes.
I just heard the word contingent contract. So people buy properties with bank loan. And what if the first buyer who comes to you and it's a cash deal, but then the 30 days start and a local comes up that wants to buy it subject to a mortgage? That's, to me, a disaster waiting to happen.
you guys pay for inspection.
Okay, but like
appraisal.
priorities,
Yeah.
like these exist in a lot of deed restrictions and we work with them and deal with them all the time and it's fine.
Mhm.
So.
Indeed.
I'm just gonna agree that you got yourself in hot.
You didn't want to do a deed restriction, you wanted to do this HOA documents, but it's essentially the same thing. Right? Well, similar. The idea was similar, that for 30 days, there was gonna be a priority period for a local worker.
Well, it's distinguished in my mind, at least, that might have to deal with. If it's a deed restriction, it's a cloud on title, and that's gonna prevent selling. If it's in the declaration and it's a priority, and I love, you know, if that's the term that emerges out of this, that's better. You know,
I will disagree. It doesn't make a whit of difference where it is. If it's a real covenant, it's a real covenant. It can stand alone as a restriction and be 4 sentences long. It can be buried in a 60-page condominium declaration. The
I think
language is equally
you're right.
enforceable. So what is set up just in terms of, to give a little more detail on the question of process. The requirement that is set up right now is that, and this is that addressing the process for that future owner. If an owner shall desire to sell his or her unit, he or she shall notify the town or such other person or entity as may be designated by the town, like the Summit County Housing Authority, for instance, in writing of his or her intention to sell the unit. It's called the sale notice. After delivery of the sale notice to the town, the unit may be offered, advertised, or listed for sale by such owner at such owner's sole cost and expense in any way the owner may choose, provided, however, that the unit shall not be sold, transferred, and or conveyed to any person, entity, or entities other than a resident eligible household defined terms during the first 30 days after delivery of the sale notice to the town. So it's a 30-day period. You can't sell it to anybody else. And I would argue that a contract to sell it to somebody else that is not contingent on a prior sale under this priority would be a violation of that covenant.
Yeah.
Do you feel that the current contracts are a violation of that covenant, or?
This covenant isn't filed yet. It's
Correct,
not
okay.
legally effective, and it won't be until the day of filing of the final plat.
What is in there?
Here's-
Thad, I think you're exactly right on that. What is in there is, I think in all our contracts, we got in there that is subject to town approval, so that throws a big net. You know, if there's something we missed and the town's concerned about it.
Are these units just, I guess my last question, I swear, just based on what Thad said in terms of noticing the town, et cetera, are these units, have you notified like the Summit County Housing Authority that these units exist or anything like that?
Here's the irony. The Summit County Housing Authority, we approached them almost a year ago, let them know what's going on. They won't put them on their webpage until the plat is recorded.
Okay,
So, but, you know, as a practical matter, in our experience, it doesn't matter with the amount of social media we do and other advertising. People come to us via that direction than they do through the house. Historically.
Why did you wait so long to do the plat?
it's the last thing you do.
It's not. done.
Sometime, sometime we should show you the list of things that we need to
It's-
provide. It's.
Okay.
There's literally a ream of paper in my desk, yeah.
We've
Here-
had one person work on it full-time for about 4 months, you know, getting everything together. But you know, the extra eyes, I don't begrudge it. I think the extra eyes are great, and that in particular, it's good to have extra eyes and six and button it up.
So that, have we helped you?
I don't think,
Are we
We
supposed
haven't
to help?
gotten
Are we
there
trying to help you?
Yeah, what did you want?
Yeah, right.
we don't
You wanna
vote,
vote,
we're
I
not
think.
voting on anything, so I think.
I did
Yes,
hear.
but
Could you go around and give an opinion?
Madam
General
Chair.
consensus on how the planning commissioners feel about the 3 or the 2 going under contract currently. And then I think we need a little bit more probably of verification from the commissioners about how tracking will occur from this
Going
point
forward.
on. And then just one side note, I think there was some question over the 10-mile basin. There's a map of the 10-mile basin. So if you haven't seen that, we can get that to
Okay,
you.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then I request we be specific into, in terms of 201, 102, 103. And that would take the pressure, that'd be incredibly helpful, and then we can sort through the mechanics of, going forward.
And Thad, you let the planning commission know if they should be that specific
Oh,
or?
I think everyone can state their view of the matter without calling for a vote, and we'll see if we have consensus. Just so we do know, and I do want to have this discussion here and now, David, because this is one of the issues I raised in my comments on the Declaration of Covenants, right? The provision that I just read that gives priority, the 30-day priority to locals, is locals in that instance is defined by people residing, working within the 10-mile basin. The covenant attempts to define the 10-mile basin as meaning the town and Copper Mountain, obviously, but also in the southern portions of the Eagles Nest Wilderness. I don't believe that's in the basin of the 10-mile river. It's in the basin of the Blue River. I just sort of want that out on the record for you, David.
We'll follow, Katie and Chris's lead on that, if that's okay. You guys want to.
Thank you.
Now I have one other question is, in that definition or what you read, are you targeting people that work in the county?
Now, this one is the condition of approval made reference to the 10-mile basin.
Sorry. People that work in the 10-mile basin?
Household that at least one person who works 30 hours per week in the 10-mile basin. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Or a business, right, that buys
Yeah.
it for then appropriate occupancy.
I feel like this condition number 5 has the word resident of the 10-mile basin, and I really think that was a mistake. Because if you read the minutes, the whole time up until that moment, we're talking about local workforce housing. So.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that would go away with the draft that's circulating right now.
Well, it kind of sounded like
Yeah,
what
based
Thad
on
is
what
working
Thad
on.
read.
It's fine. Okay, do we just want to go one by one and then call it good? No, I'm not starting. I get to go last. Danny, Jessica?
Here's my opinion. As a practical matter, I don't mind if David sells the 3 units. If there is a legal or technical concern with the integrity of everything that we do, then I do have a concern. And I'm gonna admit that I'm not the attorney, and I'll defer to Thad on that. So Thad, if you feel that you can find a way to make it work for these 3 units and then have a standard process moving forward without creating some special nuance for this one, request.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that.
I would suggest then you take the applicant up on his offer to provide you with all of the information with respect to these 3 units that was called for in the June 23rd, 2023 letter. At that point, I think you are consistent with both the spirit and at least the previously expressed letter of your condition.
Great. That
Do
seems
you
really
mean like the planning commission? Is that something?
No,
like-
no, to be provided
staff.
to staff at the time of final.
Okay.
Yeah.
As noted in the letter.
I'm in the same boat. I don't see any reason to hold up those 3 contracts, and I think that it sounds like David is willing to work with Thad and staff to fine tune this moving forward, to make sure there's no confusion moving forward. I just personally don't see any reason, as long as Thad can make it work legally, I don't see any reason to hold up those 3 contracts. And I think that we will see the 30 days moving forward as a right of first refusal or priority given to workers in the 10-mile basin. But these, with as many units as are still available for the same price, I don't see who we're benefiting by sticking to an interpretation of that code that will be enforced for the rest of the units.
Okay,
So I'd be in favor of.
Do you
allowing
guys
those 3
wanna
units.
go? You need to go?
I, without wasting, Andy said it, what's on my mind. I mean, I don't see any reason. There's 22 more units. There's plenty of inventory for people that work in 10-mile basin. There's plenty of inventory. So I agree. That can work it out. I'm perfectly satisfied to allow 3 units to go through the mill.
I would just add, I'm okay with all of them. I don't think we're winning by making 5 more people sit and wait
You're
for
okay with
30
the 8,
days.
Not all 22, but.
The 8 that are under contract right now.
and
But I would echo what you all said.
Yeah, and I guess I would say, I think it matters that we talked about a process and a way that we wanted to do things, and I understand it got muddy. So I'm okay with the 3, but I really want to make sure that moving forward past the 3, we are doing it in the spirit of, everything that we talked about.
Mm.
And
And provide the documents.
provide the
by
documents to
final-
staff.
Yeah.
And like, so that way we don't have to, we can just tell them and they're tracking what you're doing and we don't have to be concerned about it.
I have just one question for going forward. Do we agree that once the map is platted and these things are listed on the market, that the 30-day starts then? You don't need a buyer to start a 30-day clock.
no,
It's the day it's listed.
Yes, okay.
The day it's listed is it starts your clock. By the way, how many units?
Unless it's not recorded.
No, no.
But it's gonna get recorded.
It's gonna get recorded.
But
there's 2.
like, if we're going by like the day it's listed prior to recording, then all of these would be fine. After recording, then it's the day it's listed.
The problem is that we don't have a record of how it was done because this was never fully provided to the town. So it's, I think.
But it seems like we have a workable agreement.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I was just gonna ask you, how many, so there's a phase 1 and a phase 2, is that correct? 3 phases. How many is phase 1?
14.
14, so those are the 14 you're trying to sell. You're not trying to sell all 30 of them, or are you?
I think 1 is under contract in phase 3.
Oh, so you are.
But, so we've got plenty of time for a closing, so we can, with the language we're perfecting with staff, we'll sort it out, we'll come in technical compliance with all that stuff, I don't see an issue.
Okay.
If we run units, we're going to unit. 22 units.
Right.
And phase 3 encompasses all 30 units or is,
No, they're just in phase 1,
okay, but phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3, how many units are there total?
30.
Okay. And you are fully planning to build all 30?
They're built. Are they not built?
They're up.
It's there.
Oh, great.
We're, interior finishing out landscaping,
For all of them, all 30?
bonding, huge amount of money to make it.
Great.
Okay, well.
How's that
I
going?
hope that worked out for you. Does that help that?
Really appreciate it.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for being here.
All right.
Thank you,
Motion
Ted.
to adjourn?
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Staff update.
Oh,
Super fast.
sure. Sorry.
Nope, that's okay.
Updates?
Just really
Everybody's actually gotten that. Okay, great.
What Kim was just referring to, if you could verify that your contact information is okay, just so we make sure. So if you haven't seen that yet, come on around and take a look before you walk out. Second one, we wanted to give you a heads up that your meeting, unless there's any last minute things that happen to come up again, but we are planning on canceling your next meeting on February 20th. We have a few big major site sketch plan applications in, but they are all on hold, deemed incomplete. And so we're waiting for them to become complete before we can move them forward to. So you do have things that are going to come forward, but they're not ready yet. And then wanted to give you an update on 310 East Main, which is Prospectors Marketplace, formerly known as Rainbow Court. You might have noticed they put up really large HVAC equipment in the third floor step back. That per planning was not on the plans that Planning Commission saw. It's also not allowed by code to be in the third floor step back. We talked to the applicant, the contractor, and he had put it on the mechanical plans. Our former building division staff approved those mechanical plans with what you see today. We went to the attorney and he said that gave them vested rights to keep that mechanical equipment in the third floor step back. So we cannot require it to come down even though it doesn't meet the planning chapter 180. So what the least that we can do is we are working with that applicant, the contractor. He is going to be submitting an administrative site plan for screening of that mechanical equipment, and most likely because it is an impact, obviously, you can't say no to it, but we probably will bring it to Planning Commission potentially. We won't have a special meeting for it, but if the timing works so that you could potentially weigh in on the proposed color, material, and height of that screening, because it is obviously going to stand out.
It's gonna be so obvious. Almost
So,
doesn't help,
yeah.
but also don't wanna look at that. Yeah.
Wanted to give you a heads up, so if you see it on the agenda, you understood a little bit of background about it, why it's.
Similar to what we dealt with the AC Marriott.
Yeah. Yep. Except that one, they didn't want to screen. This one, the applicant is perfectly okay screening. As a side note, our building consultant services that we use now are going to send any mechanical permits to planning to sign off on that are for anything exterior, so we won't have this happen again. It's, so that's our correction for the future to stop it from happening. And then really last quick thing is dark skies. We're moving forward. You might have seen that in the paper. We are looking for representatives to be on our steering committee. It is 3 meetings between now and May. We're aiming for the beginning of March, the beginning of April, and the beginning of May. We'll feed you dinner. Mark will lead them and is very enthusiastic, but it does involve some work on your end aside from those 3 meetings. You interested?
I would be. I've dealt with that dark sky in several other jurisdictions.
Okay.
And have feedback.
Okay, and honestly, if that works for everyone, we don't really want more than 1 planning commissioner because we don't want to hit quorum or anything.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right.
All you.
Yeah, get in touch.
Right, and the Emma will be.
Okay, perfect.
It's the project.
And before we adjourn, I want to ask a question about Footsville. Where are we in the process? Have they applied for permit?
Don't they have a building?
Yeah,
permit?
they
That's the
have
whole
all of
issue.
their
They
permits.
have all their
And they
permits.
kept it going by making action by moving those buildings.
But
There might be
I've
another
heard that it's
timeline.
kind of a different building than what we
Oh, I
approved.
haven't heard that.
Would it be possible to bring a comparison of the plans that were approved and what is currently on the books? I know a lot of people in here didn't even see it.
So you want to see the building permit plan
Like to see.
and the planning commission plan?
There's a rumor that it's kind of a different building, different unit counts, different massing, which to me probably should have come back in here
Yeah.
if it is. So I would just love to see those things
Yeah.
if we could see a side.
And
by
I
side.
admit, I don't know that, but I'm not gonna say it's not true, just from not having been familiar with a
Yeah.
lot of that.
And
so.
it seems like it's probably too late for us to do anything about it. But
Yeah.
I would appreciate seeing.
I can do that.
Mhm.
No, if it's
Well, but if
different
they have
and it
building
was
permits.
missed,
if
It
they
still
have-
doesn't make it okay.
No, but
Okay.
it would be a tricky
I'm
process
sure
to stop once
it's
they have a
fine.
building. I'm curious because somebody told me that it looks kind of different.
That surprises me, to be honest. but-
Yeah, I would be surprised if it got through without coming back to see us if it's a vastly different building. I'm just curious.
Gibson was really on that, and I feel like he would have brought it back. We'll see.
If you can
Yep.
take a look.
I can take a look. It won't be tomorrow, but I'll get back to
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Or the 20th, meeting on the 20th.
There is no meeting on the
Right,
20th.
exactly.
All right, sorry, that was it.
One more question. On the one that had all the drilling, is the building department going out and like inspecting that fence?
No.
Okay.
Oh, are
A community resource, Joe Phillips, has been
Okay.
going out to check on
And
it.
have they disturbed 1 inch past their fence?
According to him, no.
It does look, we walk by and it does look like it's
stood up fine.
I know,
Okay.
I do go by there regularly. We still have a lot of complaints from the neighbors on the noise, including generators running when it was really cold a couple weeks ago. So I kind of make it a habit to make it part of my route when I'm out and just on foot. And so I admit, I have not heard any loud noises in weeks coming from the job site.
Yeah, it's nice when they start.
Stop,
Yeah.
they're done drilling, because that was a continuous, I would hear that, it'd be like hearing I-70, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, but yes, so he is, once a week, he told you he's going.
I'm also driving by as well.
Thank you.
So there's a lot of eyes on that.
Not that we're walking on this slow, most of us, I admit, and checking it, but.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, third.
It's unanimous.
You're here. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Right, some Girl Scout cookies.
Love it. What kind do you want?
I know.
I was reading all this stuff before.
Where's that?
Nice. What kind do you want?
See it.
Maybe.
I do.
Sorry, what's that?
I wanted to do the same thing. He's kind of.
Do-si-do? I can go get them right now for you.